Tuesday, June 30th, 2026. Welcome back to the Global Defense War Monthly Panel. I am John Michael Chambers. In each monthly broadcast, we will cover from a military perspective just what is going on behind the scenes, dismantling the deceptions, and making sense of all the madness in this operation. Please continue to share these episodes far and wide. Quick few announcements important for all patriots here. Our good friend Juan O'Savin and retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Meck are hosting the Storm Summit, September 10th through 13th. Mark your calendars. Same hotel as the Fraud Fighter Summit, the Ahern Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. Get your tickets. The last one sold out, every seat. I would imagine this one will too. So Storm Summit, let's see, it's stormsummit.us. Bookmark that, get on over to the site and go meet Juan O'Savin and a panel of people to kick some deep state butt. We have, they'll be addressing arrests, honest elections, and honest money. Thank you, Juan O'Savin, for putting these together for the world. We streamed the Fraud Fighter Summit, and we will be working with Juan's team to stream this one for you if you cannot get there. But please get there and be part of history. Very important. I mean, right before the potential midterm elections. Anyway, next image, please. Also joining us is Sheila Holm in our Patriot Q&A monthly Q&A hour. Sheila and I on private Zoom room screen. Sheila's there for 1 solid hour simply to answer your questions. So come join Sheila Holm and I. Mark your calendars, July 30th, 8 p.m. Eastern. How do you get there? Visit jmcbroadcasting.com and click on Premium Portal and see if this is an option for you. If it is, we very much look forward to seeing you there. All right, one more announcement. Under One Flag is a 501c3 nonprofit organization founded by military personnel and first responders dedicated to honoring and supporting those who protect our freedoms and keep us safe. With no paid positions, they ensure that every donor dollar directly impacts the lives of those we serve, maximizing our ability to express gratitude and provide meaningful support to our nation's heroes. Please visit and support our veterans and first responders, www.underoneflag.org. I've interviewed the founders of Under One Flag on other shows. Actually, I think on this broadcast as well. And JMC Broadcasting does a monthly automatic draft supporting these folks. Please consider to do so yourself. Thank you all very much. All right, let's move on. We've got our Global Defense War monthly panel you've been waiting for. The team is in the house. Former Australian Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi served 24 years in the Australian Army. He's a national leader of Australia One Party. Be sure to tune in to Bosi Briefs. I sit down with Ricardo every other Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Also joining us is retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel with extensive experience in logistics, finance, procurement, and large-scale systems management across decades of military and Department of Defense service. His extensive service to this country across this globe can be found at jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on Contributors tab. All right, also joining us, but by the way, all of the guests, contributors here can be found at JMC Broadcasting by clicking on Contributors. You'll see their extended biographies, their photographs, as well as a link so you can follow them beyond this very broadcast. And our next panel guest is Michael Jaco. You see Michael on the screen, popular podcaster and great friend to this movement. Michael Jaco is a retired veteran Navy SEAL dedicated a total of 35 years serving the United States government in very high-risk environments. And also joining us, let me say this, it was after interviewing Derek Johnson, probably about 2 years ago or some time back, in a broadcast I do called Conversations of Consequence, that I decided it was of most importance to bring military experts onto a monthly panel to help us all through this continuity of government military operation to make sense of these times. So it was a conversation that was inspired by Derek, and I thank Derek for the introductions of some of our revolving panel guests here. whom have all become good friends, contributors, and allies for the work I put forth here at JMC Broadcasting. I want to thank Derek Johnson publicly here. Derek Johnson, of course, is retired from the United States Army and is an expert on tabulating and covering our Commander-in-Chief, President Donald J. Trump's laws and orders, PEDS, law of war manual updates, and connecting it all to current events. So that's our panel for today. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Good to see you all. You know, there's going to be a lot to unpack. I mean, so much happens really in the course of a day in terms of world and news events. And here we have a whole month before we get to reconvene. So, you know, we can't cover everything, but we'll cover some of the points. And then we'll have the panel raise an issue or two that later on, if we've got the time as well. What we're going to cover to our audience today is July 4th and beyond. Brief commentary on the changing landscape of the worldview of Israel and Netanyahu. We're going to talk about Venezuela as the 51st state. Quick comment on the current true status of Iran, and Trump's executive order on quantum technologies innovation. This is a fascinating release from the president, and also election obstacles in progress. And then we're going to close out with off-world entities and the release of the UFO-related files, and we might have a quick commentary on Big Mike. I'm wondering why there isn't a lawsuit being filed. I think you can figure out why. But anyway, let's move on and have a little bit of fun because usually I'm so straight out there, and because it's a serious subject and we have experts on the panel. But I want to have a little bit of fun before we take the first question to the panel. Run this clip from Dr. Trump.
Have you or someone you know been diagnosed with TDS? The symptoms can be relentless. Fortunately, I'm Dr. Trump, and I have a treatment plan. Let's hear what some of my patients have to say.
I have been suffering for over a decade, and after listening to Dr. Trump, I can see some results.
Man, I've been suffering for years. I really didn't believe that was help out there. That was when I came across this video on TV.
I really thought I was a lost cause. This was gonna affect me for the rest of my life. But after using the treatment plan, I can see a difference.
I really wasn't sure I could help some of these people. They were so far gone, I wasn't really sure.
I had no idea how much this was affecting my life. My work is slowed down. I'm hardly recognizable anymore. I just needed help.
I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Constantly angry. I made everyone miserable around me.
I feel like I've aged 20 years in the last 2 years. I've been so concerned. I was really starting to worry about my future.
The treatment is simple. Turn off fake news. Say your prayers, and if you ever feel anxious, just have a Diet Coke like me, and you're going to see a remarkable difference in your life.
Well, for entertainment purposes only, of course, AI. And this, I believe, was published by Dan Scavino. So I thought to share it with, one moment, I want to adjust the screen thing here. There we go. Thought I'd share it with all of the gentlemen on the screen and everybody watching. It was, I personally enjoyed the Rosie O'Donnell and Robert De Niro. That was kind of fun. Anyway, let's begin with just the broad question. Anyone who attended the Fraud Fighter Summit? Anybody on screen attended that? Mike, tell us about that. What was your experience? What'd you glean from it? You know, what's your review?
It's a great networking event. You get to meet a lot of people. We had Tina Peter show up. We saw some great upcoming films, Brazil and so forth, and we were able to get some deep insight of what's coming, because the fraud is it's not just in the bonds and so forth. It's also in the medical and in the election. So they're the same type of fraud is used in each one of them. So it was very, very insightful. Had incredible speakers, and the next one coming up is just going to go to the next level again. So really looking forward to having more insights of what's coming. From the last one that I was at, I brought in a lot of the speakers on my show, and I intend to do it again in this one. Mitch Vexler, who's disclosing the fraud that's happening, the school bonds, and so forth. The housing. We pay these crazy taxes, and we're reaching a point where it's going to destroy America. It can't continue. It's going to implode. So we're going to see, some really good insights, I think, going forward. And it could be in where Mitch is at, down in Texas, where they're going to expose it. And if they get resolution down in Texas, I think it'll be able to be used throughout the United States.
Excellent. And I think you're right. The next event Juan's putting on is going to be epic. But thanks for letting us know about all that. I'd like to talk about the 4th of July. We'll start at the top of the panel with retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi. July 4th, what can we expect? What are the highlights that we will see unfold between? So it's a two-part question. What can we expect in July 4th, in your estimation? And probably more importantly, what's going to happen after July 4th? Up to the midterms, what will be the focus in this country, in your opinion, and in our movement? And I know Derek gets a lot of traffic from his followers. We hear a lot of people. I'm not necessarily saying Derek's followers, but all of our collective followers. A lot of folks have all these speculations. We're going to have JFK Jr. surface. We're going to swing people from the gallows poles during the July 4th, and we're going to have the EBS will be launched. The new money's coming out. All these things are going to happen on July 4th. I'm wondering about that. So I'd like to know what this panel believes may or may not happen in the celebrations of July 4th or anything surrounding that. Ricardo, sir.
Thanks, John. This is a preparatory event. It in and of itself, obviously, it's the 250th anniversary. It's the biggest party for the millennium. As far as the US is concerned, this is fantastic, and it should be. But in context, in terms of this war, you've got the World Cup going on, and you've seen the flood of videos coming out from people of different nations, and the message is identical. We heard America was divided. We heard America was brutalized. We heard it was all lies. And it doesn't matter whether you're Japanese or Scottish or Lithuanian, they're all saying the same thing. We love the United States. We love the American people. It's America's biggest sleepover. And except for the politicians, we all get along fine. So there's the Finlandians doing their rowing, and you've got every nation doing its own thing. The Scots drank Boston dry, and not one fight, but there were lots of traffic cones on every statue because that's just the way they roll. So the message coming out of the US building up to the birthday is just superb. This is part of the warfare, by the way. This isn't just a happy coincidence, okay? Because wars are fought according to principles. We have 10, I think you've got about the same, and they're roughly the same depending on nationality. But the last one was always maintenance of morale. And as Napoleon said, morale is to material as 3 is to 1. So if your people are in good spirits, they can take the hits. They can do what's got to be done. And that's exactly what this is. This is a massive morale boosting time. So the entire build up with the World Cup has been critical, absolutely critical. The morale, the messaging is superb. Everybody's on an absolute high. The world loves America. America loves the world. And apparently there's nothing greater on the planet than Texas barbecue. And having watched the videos, I want to get to Texas and try that out as well. So Derek, we'll have to make a booking and go down there together and tuck in. So this is all preparatory, preliminary operations for the 4th of July. Come 4th of July, it will be, without a doubt, a problem-free. It'll be the greatest party the world has ever seen. Now, why is that critical? Because in and of itself, the anniversary is worthy of recognition. But this is to raise everybody up, to raise their morale to a point where they are ready to take the hits. They believe in themselves. They believe in the country. The world believes in itself. The world believes in the US. So this is a bonding moment, physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, and spiritually, of the people of the world to get behind the US. So if you wanted an event to galvanize the planet, to cohere people from different nations behind this event, this is it, this build-up. Now, 4th of July itself, huge party, and somebody with a sense of humor was scheduling the games. The United States is playing England in Philadelphia on the 4th of July. Man, this is, you can see the choreography of this. It is just superb. So once again, it's all designed to boost everyone in a very real sense. It's not just inflation of egos. It's a deep connection to the past, and with deep respect for the past and everything that has been done. You know, the blood and treasure that had been spilt by the American founding fathers and all those that followed. There's much to respect, there's much to protect, there's much to strengthen now. And that's what it is. The people will be imbued with this energy. So let's get the fight. Now, why is this necessary? Because from 4 July to the midterms, there's some pain to go through, some real pain. And that pain is not just political. It's not just economic. This is actually going to hit hard at every possible level. Now, some people live, the 6 inches in front of the face because that's what they've got to do. How can I make rent? I've got to feed the children. And we've got some friends, 5 kids, horses. They've got to get out of their place and find somewhere to live because they just have to. So they've got immediate problems, and that's their focus. And other people's focus is much bigger. And so all of these people are going to go through pain. We know that. And it's going to be difficult. And we can talk about it later. But that pain, as I said, isn't just the obvious stuff. And we might talk about this towards the end of the show. But the participants in this whole war, we know that there's the bad guys, the black hats. We know that there's the cabal, there's the deep state. We know that some of us know that there are angelic entities involved. We know that there are extraterrestrials involved. And, let's get honest about this. This is a complex war beyond everyone's capacity to absorb. And so the pain that's coming needs to be, I guess, blunted by this immense event, the 250th anniversary of the birthday party, and this global joy, deep joy behind it. So as the people move between there and the midterms, and as I've said, the midterms might not even occur because things will happen. Martial law needs to be formally declared. We know we're already under it, but in a more practical sense globally, and people have to willingly accept that as the only possible solution. And so that's what I see what's happening. A big party. Enjoy yourselves, folks. Have a great, great, great time. Don't give yourself too big of a hangover because we have to gird our loins for what's coming in the next short period.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox sent me an article, I guess you'd call it, about breaking down what took place at UFC 250. And Rick, you and I covered that, Ricardo, on Bosi Briefs. I did a special broadcast with Tom Lennox and Rob Cunningham, Will Barney, and Christy Allen of JMC Broadcasting, and we broke it down there. Incredible panel. I can see us doing the same thing post July 4th celebrations and reading into some of what's perhaps being presented to us that may not be so obvious to the average person, and we look forward to doing that. But well said, Ricardo. It's going to be an incredible July 4th period. Same question to the panel, Tom Lennox, sir.
I was thinking about that while Ricardo was speaking. The big thing that I've observed amongst the players in the World Cup is the spirituality they're demonstrating. It's amazing to watch, and it doesn't matter what background they come from. Today I saw a group of Muslims praying at the end of their game. I've seen men pointing up to the sky and talking about, they don't say a word, they just point up there after they score. That spirituality is really important. Very, very important. Because what we're moving into is a spiritual financial system. When we talk about the med beds are based upon vibrations, frequency, and spirituality of the people. The quantitative financial system, it's going to measure your vibration and frequency in order for you to use your account. It's not about eyes and fingerprints and all that stuff, voice. It's about your frequency and spirituality. So when we see spirituality on that soccer field, we're seeing huge, huge changes. I personally don't think that there will be a midterm election because the day Nasara is announced, 120 days later, there has to be a new election of the president, the vice president, all of the Congress and the Senate. That's part of that law. Now, what's been modified in it, I'm not sure. But the original law, that's what it said. The other thing I see is a very difficult time for the courts. The courts going from maritime law to the law of the land, and people are going to hear about it. They may not hear about it on July 4th, but they'll hear about it pretty quick because the lawyers, they've signed an oath to Britain, the British Accreditation Registry, the bar. Well, now they're going to have to sign an oath to the Constitution of the United States, and they're going to have to be retrained into common law and the law of the land. That's going to be for the judges and the lawyers and the people who use the judges and the lawyers to get ahead. So I see that as a major, major issue. The other things I see is Canada, at least Alberta, has already had a petition signed by enough people, so they have to have a vote on whether the Alberta will become part of the United States. Alberta has the most natural resources of anybody in any other province in Canada because they control all the oil that comes out of Canada. That's a very interesting thing that I see happening over the next several months. And then I always go back to spirituality. People's spiritual relationship is going to be critical as we move forward. And that's it.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Well, fascinating. We've discussed on other broadcasts the QFS and as it relates to strengthening the moral fiber of our corrupt human race due to the mechanics of it, which you just spoke about. That's fascinating. And also, quick follow-up, the judges and lawyers all need to be retrained. Did you hear that to our audience? I mean, the bar, the British accredited, whatever it stands for, I forget now, the Bar Association, they took an oath, these judges and lawyers, to Britain. And now they have to take an oath to the Constitution and be retrained. That's some great change taking place to get this country, this constitutional republic restored. There's so many things that are taking place, and that's going to be fascinating to see and so much needed because we can't get any justice in them because they're serving another agenda. Anyway, thank you, sir. Michael, Jaco, you care to weigh in on this?
Yeah, as my two previous esteemed gentlemen said, I don't believe the election's going to happen as well. There's too many things that are against it. We're down to the wire, and they haven't passed the SAVE Act, and a lot of senators are saying they don't see it getting passed. So probably not going to happen. Now we see with the justices as well. Today and yesterday, or the day before, we saw Justice Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts both, siding with the leftist against America constitutionally. Upholding a 5-day mail-in ballot, which is destroying our election system, and also for the 14th Amendment, allowing people to come into America from other countries, have a child, and that child now is an American citizen. That was basically designed for slaves after the Civil War, so that they could, once they're born here in America, they would become American citizens. We probably should just do away with the 14th Amendment because it's being, used, and we're being abused through it. And so a lot of the things that, the justices are doing, have supported Trump. So I appreciate that. But we go all the way back to election, 2020 election, and they were going against us back then as well. So it looks like we're compromised, like we talked about with the British accredited registry, our lawyers and so forth, and the judges as well, are all compromised, and they're going to have to be replaced. They're going to have to take new oaths, like you were talking about, John, and just replace that system, which is extremely corrupt. Now, other things that are very interesting as far as the economic system, we may see gold and silver standard come back on July 4th, because if you look at the U.S. Mint, they have a Liberty Bell silver $half or half, 50 cent piece, but it's shaped in the Liberty Bell, not the normal round. And the same thing with gold. They have a half and they have a full ounce. Now, the prices on these are quite substantially more than the current, price for an ounce of silver or gold. For a $half silver Liberty Bell, it's $750 starting on July 16th. And for the 1 ounce Liberty gold dollar, it is almost $20,000, 19,000, almost 19,800, I think it is. So that's very suspect because you look at the normal, rounds and so forth for 2026. They're only maybe a couple $100 more than the actual, spot price. That's normal, 150 whatever dollars more. But that's substantially more. Now, if we look at the prices for silver on the futures, there are people that are buying futures contracts in December for $20,000 for gold as well. So somebody is in the know of something coming, because those are substantial numbers that are far and above, what the normal price of, gold and silver are. So I think we've talked about the economic system being, changed so that it reflects, the values of the American people. I think that we have a lot of gold, we have a lot of silver, and once we see this, who knows, maybe it's 4th of July where it comes out. So other than that, I think it's just going to be a great celebration. My opinion, I think we're going to we're going to beat the Brits for in the FIFA. So that'll be a fun show. So who knows? Maybe the Brits win this time, but I don't think so.
Well, thank you. Just for clarification, and I realize it's speculation. We don't know exactly what's going to happen concerning the currency and the gold and silver that you talked about. Did you say that you're possibly have a gold and silver price reset as part of the July 4th, or did you say the new, let's say, Treasury-backed currency gets released during this period of time? Which one were you relating to, or both, possibly?
Both, yeah, both possibly.
Yeah.
I don't know what the bigger plan is, but it's got to be something along those lines for for them to several days, a week so later, coming out with these extraordinarily high prices for the Liberty Bell coins.
Yes. Yeah, we discussed this on a financial show I have, and it's fascinating. It's been floated from the administration that they may reset the price of gold to 20,000 an ounce. So that lines up. The Federal Reserve has it marked at $44, $42 on their books for decades. And there's been talk about, I don't know if they've changed it, but the talk about setting a floor price for silver because it's a strategic metal and mineral now. So yeah, this is great stuff. Look, I sure hope it happens on the 4th of July. That would be better than any fireworks. But if it doesn't, folks, it's going to happen. I don't mind saying that right here and now. It is going to happen at some point in time. So let's just wait and see it play out. Thank you, Michael. Derek Johnson, I've been patiently waiting and listening to our esteemed guest. What's your view of July 4th events? And what do you see as some of the key areas of focus from July 5th forward this year?
Well, July 4th, I think it could be one of those things like President Trump for the target audience out there. It's a two-part thing always going on. It's what we know and then what they got to see. And it's like the 4th of July a few years back, where he had a massive display of arms, and the liberals were already screaming and whining, complaining. Then, just something like the gold eagle that was a gift recently. It's on the front of the President Trump put up on his True Social. They got liberals stirred up with that, and they're saying it's un-American and all these things. I'm like, the eagle is un-American, really? A golden eagle. Someone said it had 11 stars on it, which represents the Confederate States. I mean, they try to twist it any way possible. But, President Trump just put up a post the other day. He said he had 65% approval. Now, that's key right there is what we were talking about 3 or 4 months back. I can't remember what panel we were on, but we were talking about where we thought it'd be 70-30 or 80-20, somewhere in there. If President Trump's numbers, which they will, this is all for other people, but the numbers will get there. But when the numbers reach around 70-30, 75-25, 80-20, somewhere in there, that's enough to be able to go full-fledged on the people. Because there's always going to be that portion that just won't get it, don't want to get it. They're lazy, they're stubborn, whatever it may be. So those are massive numbers. I'm explaining that to all my friends and family. I'm like, years past, even though those presidents were in a different system, and President Trump is the 45-47, which is on purpose, it's all strategic. But let's just use those numbers because you have to with a target audience. 51% in a president's last 2 years of a first or a second term was a big number. 51% approval. So President Trump's putting up 65%. That number hops up to 80. The 80-20 rule is normally a protocol in business that you can safely go by. That would be a big number. And that's when you can start, just pouring out whatever you want to pour on the people. And then like gold and silver, that's Texas was the first state to go to that. Speaking of Texas barbecue, Texas was the first to issue the gold standard again. So we know it's happening because Texas is a leader. Texas is a state people forget was a republic before it joined the union. It's always threatened to secede from the union. And their GDP alone would just about destroy the United States of America, just economy wise, because of their gross domestic product. So, see, Texas has a big foothold in that for certain reasons. And then you get into like the election talk, the executive order 13848 with a national emergency. That one executive order alone with a national emergency, that one alone proves the military occupation, military government, continuity government, puppet government, because why would quote unquote Joe? I tell people all the time, if Joe Biden was president, he'd have had the same authority and power as every other president. No matter how much you would have disliked or loathed them or hated them or whatever, wouldn't matter. He'd have had the same power. So how come 11 executive orders with 11 national emergencies were continued by quote unquote Joe just to hand right back to President Trump? So it would be like this. It would be saying, okay, we're going to continue all these, which means keep them active, but then we're going to hand them right back to you, President Trump. But by the way, we're going to call you a dictator, a king, and a Nazi. That makes no sense, people. And especially Executive Order 13848 for election interference. That's also the executive order that would have given President Trump the go ahead to federalize the National Guard and reserve components to active duty for these deployments, and we've seen that. So there's a lot of tie-in there. But like Lieutenant Colonel Bosi said, you build the morale up of the people. Every American this weekend, they're going to be on a beach at a lake, at a party, at a barbecue. They're going to be drinking all kinds of different things. And for the first time ever, there's going to be a bunch of redneck hillbilly bubbas who's never cared about soccer before in their life. But because of this setup and because we're playing the British, right, in Philadelphia, and all our history there, there's going to be a bunch of rednecks with their beers finally watching soccer for the first time, cheering for it. So that morale is going to be unprecedented. And President Trump's display of arms is going to be unprecedented. And I think it could be something where even some of the ships from other nations come out in our harbors. You just never know. I think that some of this blockade in Iran had a different play. It could be to where all the other militaries are joining in with our military. You just never know, because I think where we're headed is more positive. I don't think that you can have too much doomsday, gloom and doom after the 4th, because this is a big deal for us living. I may get to see 300. I don't know. It just depends. But, 50 years from now, I would be 93 years old. It's a possibility. But I don't think that my legs and my body will work like it will work right now. So, I'm going to take advantage of 250 while I can. So it's a big deal for anyone living right now. So anything past this, moving to November, one day at a time, and trust President Trump. But I mean, it's pretty epic what's been happening. The judges, the courts. Now I know what happened with the birthright citizenship, but there's a lot of other big wins that shows that, hey, the judges are doing what they're supposed to be doing where they're doing it. But where they're not doing things, President Trump said today that Congress can take care of the birthright citizenship. It has nothing to do with the 9 Supreme Court justices. So there's a lot of things that are resetting and getting us back to what the actual government's supposed to look like. And it's educational as well for the people out there. People have to learn this stuff too. It can't just be the few of us talking, and we can't just always be talking. We have to be doing and making it applicable in our lives. So a lot of people are learning. And then the White House and the Department of Education have been dropping all these little excerpts of certain things that's going to be coming. They've been putting up all of our old founders' photos and things. So there's a lot of educational points that are coming to people too. So, getting people ruffled and rattled isn't always a bad thing. It's like President Trump says, it gets them engaged. And even if they're cussing or they're mad, they're still engaged. So I say just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, you bet. Very exciting. Thanks, Derek. And we look forward to celebrating with them redneck hillbillies over a good soccer match. But you're right. It's going to be very exciting. I'm, of course, 10,000 miles away, but I'll be watching the events unfold from my home here. Very, very much so. Look forward to it. We'll go back to the top of the panel with just a quick 40,000-foot view type of an answer question to this question. We've talked about this before, but it's noteworthy to weigh in on it again. Why? Because the awareness and the sentiment concerning Israel and Netanyahu has changed. If you go back a year, 2 years ago, you wouldn't find a whole lot of the narrative that's permeating across the world concerning Israel and Netanyahu. And of course, Q stated, save Israel for last. So two-part question. What's an update on Iran, the actual status of what's going on? Because every day it just seems to change. They signed an agreement, they violated an agreement. The blockade is happening, the blockade is not happening. We're dropping bombs, we're not dropping bombs. What's your analysis of Iran? How much of the Iran operation maybe already took place? And again, we're watching certain scripts. How much is real? What's the status of Iran? And then Netanyahu and Israel, Lieutenant Colonel Bosi.
Thanks, John. Iran at this stage is mainly misdirection. There are so many other things being progressed that Iran's done. It's not a problem. As you say, depending on what time of day it is, you'll get a different story. So from my perspective, I see it as simply as misdirection. Look over here because we don't want to look down here. That's that one. In terms of Israel, and just so once again, so we're clear, we're not talking about the average Jaime who's running his down the road. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Israel as a device, as a control device for the planet. And all roads lead back to that device. Everything that we're suffering from, they are the facilitators of powers greater than themselves. The vitriol, the direct vitriol now available online, and then the freedom with which people are permitted to express their justified and unjustified hatred of Jews, Israel, the Rothschilds, Netanyahu, is extraordinary. It's reaching fever pitch, and even little old Australia, where you couldn't even complain to the slightest degree about anything Israeli or Jewish. Now the social media feed is flooded with, as I said, really cogent arguments, right down to "fuck the Jews" and everything in between. There was recently a movie called Vigilante. What was it? Citizen Vigilante, which is which is a movie with starring Armie Hammer, and he's an ex-US military officer who is delivering justice against the Muslims for all the crimes that they are permitting and committing. And what's interesting is it's funded by the Jews. Armie Hammer identifies as a Jew, and so what people it's amusing to watch, because you've got the anti-Jewish lobby saying, "Oh, well, it's just the Jews using the Muslims as the whipping boy all over again," when they're really behind it. But what people who come to that conclusion in that sense aren't getting is it's a reveal of exactly, again, and when we say the Israeli problem, we're not talking Jews. We're talking about the device that has been the mechanism by which the planet is being controlled. That's being revealed. Evidence to that, of course, there's a beautiful AI copy of a scene from Vigilante, Citizen Vigilante, but instead of having Armie Hammer as the man with the pistol confronting an Arabic family or a Muslim family, it's oh gee, what's his name? Braveheart. My God, I can't remember. I've forgotten his name. Director, movie. Can't believe. Anyway, he's now playing the role of the man with the gun, and he's confronting three Jews, and he's putting the same points to them about everything that is bad feeds back to your door, and we're talking about the device. And so we're reaching this crescendo, this fever pitch of targeting this device called Israel in such a direct way. We are now coming close to the end. People are allowed to say what they want to say. They're allowed to be honest. They're allowed to be impolite, and there is no pushback. And this is part of that necessary precondition for actions against Israel, the device, the controlling device, the mechanism, because what's coming will shock a lot of people. It'll make a whole bunch of other people extremely happy. But 92% of the Congress who identify as dual Israeli citizens, and we understand they're not actually practicing Jews. It's a sign up they must do in order to get the funding, in order to get into Parliament, into politics, the Congress and the Senate, in order to do what needs to be done, in order to be the useful idiots that this mechanism called Israel requires to drive the US. And so it's gratifying to watch the truth finally coming out, notwithstanding the vitriol and the genuine hatred, which is not unjustified. And this is why it's necessary for this crescendo to reach a real fever pitch. So the only obvious solution is to destroy Israel, the mechanism, not the Jews, Israel, the mechanism. And so we can get back to doing what we need to do. And just quickly, the final point, the Board of Peace and the commitment of the members of the Board of Peace to donate billions of dollars to fight this war by construction. Let's build up the Palestinian police force. Let's build housing. Let's build. Well, that's what a businessman does. As I've said once before, a soldier's predisposition is to break stuff. We love doing it and leave a smoking ruin. Trump's a businessman. He works by defeating the enemy, by building a better burger as opposed to trashing the other burger joint. And so this is what's happening. So whilst this mechanism called Israel is going to be smashed beyond recognition and hated for the rest of history, the actual Jewish people and the Palestinian people and all of that stuff will be too busy building the future rather than lamenting the past.
What a great analysis. Thank you, sir. The mechanism called Israel. It's well said. And you can feel the momentum shift, as you alluded to. So thanks for weighing in on that. Lieutenant Colonel Lennox, what's your views on well, first Iran and then Netanyahu and Israel?
I believe that Iran is done, that it's been completed, that anytime we see something that happened, it's part of a false flag in order to get people focused on Iran instead of focused on Israel or Cuba or some of the other places that we've talked about. But Iran, for all intents and purposes, I believe has been done for 30 to 45 days. That's personal opinion. I think anytime they send rockets out, it's with permission from Donald Trump. If he says, okay, bomb this place, they'll do it. Otherwise, he's already wiped out their military. He did that 30, 40 days ago. The entire Air Force, Navy, Army. That's my opinion on Iran. I see all the false flags and I get, oh, okay, false flag. Israel's a different story. Israel is not and never was a country. The Khazarians, the Zionists, and then there's the true Jews. The Khazarians and the Zionists have controlled Israel. It's the home of the bank for the Rothschilds. It's the home for a whole lot of, as Ricardo said, a whole lot of senators and congressmen who are dual citizens. Israel does not have a treaty with anybody that allows you to go in there and get the people that you want arrested. They don't have one for anybody. So when we look at Israel and we find out that Netanyahu is not even Netanyahu's name, he's actually from Eastern Europe, a Zionist, Khazarian. People learn these things. They learn that Soros voted in their local district attorney. In the case of Fairfax County, where I live, it's Steve DeShano. And he told me personally that Soros provided the money for his election. When people find out these things and then they see what these people do, they get very, very upset. Like Descano agreed to a 5-year sentence for 2 guys that murdered somebody. That kind of thing hits the news and people get really upset. And then they find out that he was funded by Soros. That's even worse. So when we look at that and we look at these number of people, particularly the Congress and Senate, we already know that they're gone at some point or another. I think over half of them are already actors or clones. And I believe that Israel will be gone very quickly. How quickly is very quickly? I don't know. We've been doing this for how many years? Quite a few.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I think it's very close.
I think you're right, sir. And thank you. Central casting. The president seems to be saying this more often than not these days concerning individuals and different things. You're absolutely right. We're watching, we're watching a movie, right? Get the popcorn, right? So I published something the other day, sort of a spoof off of Jaws. We're going to need a bigger boat. when people complaining about their popcorn, I tell them you're going to need a bigger bucket, okay, because there's a lot coming away. But yeah, central casting is a big piece of that, and you're right about the momentum against Israel. It's building, building, and building, and these things are called reveals. And Q again, save Israel for last. Michael, Jaco, what's your views of the subject at hand?
Yeah, so I believe that we're probably going to see some more intense fighting in Iran. I think we just saw overnight that a lot of the top people have been assassinated by people in Iran. So this is a good move. We've been kind of waiting. I have been waiting for this to evolve. I think special operations, special forces, perhaps are involved in that. I've been saying that for quite some time. We've had boots on the ground, I think, for quite some time. Now, as far as Karg Island, I think that might be seized by the Marines, and then they'll push into the shoreline, and that'll be a complete control of the Straits of Hormuz, and that'll be further destruction of the regime that's there right now. The people will rise up even more. So that process is happening. Maybe it happens before the Marines have to get involved. Maybe the Marines don't have to be involved whatsoever, but that's kind of the way I've been seeing things for a little bit. We'll see how that works out. It's going to be easy take from the Marines to do that. And then you look at Israel. Israel's been a useful tool for us to take out all of Iran's puppets, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Yemenis. These are all puppets. I had to deal with them for most of my career in the SEAL teams and the CIA. A lot of the problems in the Middle East has been from the Iranians using the money that they get from the oil to fund all those terrorist activities. So we're seeing that basically die out. That's a great move. There's going to be amazing peace. Abraham Accords are going to spread throughout the Middle East. There's going to be wealth and lots of people happy for once. I think that's part of some of the things that we're so. If you look at Netanyahu, he's been replaced. Yes, you need a big bucket of popcorn to watch this show. So all of the actors that have been in place for a long time, I think have been replaced for these major military institutions and also government positions. They've been replaced by other people, and so things are moving in a good direction. I'm very happy with the way things are unfolding. It's going to be probably after maybe in the early parts of next year when we finally have our election, right? The midterms, and they're safe and secure, and we vote on the same day. That's going to be an amazing event, and we have economic system is really starting to kick in at that point. The other one probably going to collapse, cause a lot of mayhem short term, but long term we're going to see a lot of great things happen.
Encouraging, and I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you, Michael. Looks like we've got someone joining the panel in just a moment with us. We'll take the same question to Derek Johnson. We're discussing Iran, current status of, and your views on the momentum and narrative concerning Netanyahu and Israel.
Well, I always have to bring in the unconventional and irregular warfare part of this, which is the 40,000 foot view first of what President Trump and what that will look like. And, for the people out there in the target audience, they still have to be in that because there's someone that's going to have to be in the percentile that gets told later. But for the people watching and listening, if you love reading, we have a saying, hindsight's 2020. And some of us was already telling it. I know Michael Jaco. No, we've been talking about it a long time when we do shows together. But when you look at the National Defense Authorization Acts, I mean, these are just basic things we've had for years. But the NDAAs, well, 21 to 25, that's when the whole world thought that quote unquote Joe was president. But now when you look back on those specific NDAAs, the ones before that didn't have anything to do with Iran in it. All right. And those particular, there's one in particular that mentions 60% uranium. Well, how was it nailed right on the dot that it was 60% uranium, right? And then there's two other NDAAs that specifically say certain things that no other say out there. So why wasn't quote unquote Joe taking action on this? He talked about it. They had the puppet talking about it, the actor talking about it, but he never took action on it. All right. And so when President Trump says the Navy's at the bottom of the sea, the Air Force is destroying all this, Dan Scavino or someone the other day said that, and even President Trump said this, that you may hear one rocket going off, but that's kind of their norm, and people forget that. It shouldn't be their norm, but it's kind of their norm. So when you talk of laws and orders, this is why you do have to get real specific into what kind of law and the laws you need to go study and read about if you really want to know about it. So I highly recommend this book. Again, I tell people all the time, Military Government Martial Law. And this is actually it was all PDF files and different kind of files back in the day. So they had to make a cover for it. This wasn't the original cover. But on page 47 in this particular version here, it talks about the blockades. Talks about blockades being military government, military occupation, and how by law you have to have certain military in there. That way it's still lawful. So when we're talking about boots on the ground, it's not the traditional boots on the ground that you've seen with Iraq and Afghanistan in the target audience. And I say what you've seen, the target audience has seen. Because when they hear boots on the ground, they think war. But when you get into unconventional warfare and irregular warfare, there's a difference in war and operations and conflicts. There's aerial conflicts and then there's small conflicts. This is not a war. Now, this built being tabbed out there as a war, but it's really not a war. We have absolutely annihilated this nation that's been chanting death to Israel and death to the United States for 47 plus years. So, you know, you got to listen to President Trump when it comes to that. Then you got to go to what is the culture around this place. And unfortunately, the culture the last 40 something years has been hearing bombs and explosions and also roadside bombs and different things, not just for military. So some of that is just a common occurrence, and it shouldn't be, but it is. But our presence there is all special operations and Marine Corps, which we all know on this panel what the special operators in Marine Corps will do when they're in there. It won't be anything remotely close to what people have heard and read through the years with Iraq and Iran. Then you get to Israel, same thing. I like to go back to December the 6th, 2017, when President Trump announced that he would be moving the embassy and naming the capital of Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. You need to go back. Everybody needs to go back and watch that video of Netanyahu's face. His face now, that hindsight 2020, when you go back and watch that, his face, he's like a little kid who's been given the keys to Toys R Us and say, hey, whatever will fit in a dump truck, you get to take home. I mean, if you go watch it, the gestures and the facial expressions, Netanyahu was like, "Oh wow, this is awesome," but it looks like a put on face where it's like when you're looking forward, knowing that hey, this guy knew what was going to happen before he rolled down the escalator, and that's what keep trying to make a re-emphasis on for people is that President Trump knew before he rolled down that escalator, the beginning, the middle, the end. That is the 45-47. So it is a strategic plan. It's been a strategic plan. And a lot of this is still theater naturally for other things. Some of it is a smoke and mirrors to hey, look over here, because President Trump has declared some national emergencies with Cuba. So we're still working on Cuba nationally. But Cuba won't won't ever be on the scale of what Iran was and Israel has been. And the other thing that I found interesting, a buddy and I were talking about this last night. We were talking about how, Israel's been a memorandum of understanding since 98. We've had a memorandum of understanding, and it's been renewed every 10 years with Israel. When President Trump mentioned the peace deal, this peace deal with Iran is a memorandum of understanding. So that's almost like a prenuptial before you would ever get to an actual peace agreement. So it's kind of interesting. It's almost it goes back to if you're going to be in a target audience and think this is all like real time, that would be the businessman going, you know what? I'm about to show you all what I can do just with a memorandum of understanding. But it's a business deal kind of deal. And it's all these stipulations around it. President Trump says if they do this, if they do this, if they do this, if they do this, if they, it's a lot of ifs there. So it still allows a commander to do what a commander needs to do if he has to do it. So a lot of people have to remember that moving forward into the future, what President Trump has displayed for a target audience as a regular president, but also a commander in chief, he has displayed the old Roosevelt speak softly, carry a big stick. I will use this stick if I have to, and you probably shouldn't force me to do so. So if you'll do all these things, what's right by your people, we won't ever have to pull out this stick. But you know, we always have to keep the realism there moving into the future. Because if everything was just gold standard and everything was 10 out of 10 perfect, then what would people expect from then on? They would expect no conversations. They would expect no supply and demand and other things of that nature. And they would expect just the president to pick up the phone and make things happen. And then what happens to all the people under the president, all the way down to the lowest level person in the economic system? They become lazy. So some of this still has to have that realism in it for people to move forward into the future. No matter what our systems do, and no matter where we go, we have to have realism there as well. So I think people are seeing that.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you for the clarification and distinct difference between traditional war, boots on the ground, as you alluded to in Afghanistan and Iraq's past wars, as opposed to the special operations that are unfolding in Iran today. I think that's very important, and I'm glad you raised that issue. Looks like we have Captain Rob Cunningham, sir. Thank you for joining us. We'll start back at the top of the panel with Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi. And we'll cycle through where we're going to be discussing now briefly Venezuela. Why? Well, because I'm going to read something from my cell phone here to paraphrase a few things. These are some of the dots to connect on comms from the president. Trump stated in a phone call not too long ago with Fox News he was seriously considering making Venezuela the 51st state. He went on the day after Venezuela beat Italy in the semifinals. Trump posted statehood with his initials. And there are some other comms from the president I'm sure Derek is following very well. We'll go to Lieutenant Colonel Bosi, sir. Venezuela, 51st state, what do you think?
I love it. With DJT, there's always method in the madness and madness in the method, and I think that's part of his job is to keep us utterly confused. Before I talk about the 51st state, Venezuela revealed as more than just what we thought it was. You know, it was corrupt communism, oil, billionaire dictators, and impoverishment of the people. And then we learned that, well, maybe there's a few clever guys that can put together a vote tabulating machine that they might then export through Cuba, through into the United States and control the elections around the planet. And now, you know, then they took them down, allegedly, the way they took them down. But what is now being revealed is Venezuela's role in global trafficking of children, adrenochrome production, DUMS, and even leading to Antarctica. So it's a bigger story, and it constantly gets bigger and bigger every day. So once again, if anybody claims to know the whole story, that's a crude expression. They're not quite telling you the truth. They're doing their best, but understand that Venezuela is a bigger player than people anticipated. Once again, it was another mechanism like Israel, and it's all of these mechanisms, let's call them, because they're not countries, as you quoted, I think it was Tom Lennox said. It's never been a country. Venezuela has been, allegedly, but they're all mechanisms for control, and that's the way that people have to look at the planet. Every country, every politician has been a control mechanism. It's got to fund itself, it's got to produce results, and it survives. 51st state, is it possible? Is it desirable? Maybe, yes. Why? In the context of 20th century history of the world and 21st century history, it seems completely absurd that the DJT would make that statement. But if you go back over the history of the planet, countries come and go, empires come and go. Look at the history of Europe, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, major empire in Europe, participant in the Great War to end all wars, broken up, fractured, restitched together. The Balkans stitched up by Tito, dismantled by his death. Not that Tito was really in charge there, because he was taken out and replaced, but that's another story as well. But again, people shouldn't be surprised by crazy statements like that, because countries have come and gone. And just so people are aware, this isn't just a crazy throwaway by DJT. We know that, I'll use Australia as an example. We know Australia's never been a sovereign nation. We've been a corporation, always have been. All the 13 original colonies of the United States were corporations established by Great Britain. It's all a business. It's all a business. And all the money flows back to the same people. It's control mechanisms. And so if the world's geography, the borders, the nature of the nations seems to change, people shouldn't be surprised. This is a unique moment in history where truth is coming out. There's going to be a little discomfort as nations go through transitions. Again, little old Australia down here, people waving their Australian flag, and there's a red version called the Red Ensign, and people will die in a ditch over the Red Ensign, and on the blue, that's a corporate one. It's all distraction. We are owned lawfully, legally by somebody else. What does somebody say once? Trump is the richest man that has ever been, or the most powerful man that's ever been, because it's all centered on him. And so it's a crazy statement, but it's designed to start shaking people awake to realize things are going to change. The new world is not the old world 2.0. It's a brand new world. And I'm glad that Tom Lennox mentioned the nature of vibration and energy as a measure of authenticity, I suppose, of honesty. And that we can talk about that later if you want to, because it's actually going to change. So this statement, 51st state, is it going to become that? Trump doesn't want to be king of the world any more than anybody else wants him to be king of the world. That's not how it's worked. But there will be control mechanisms in place to make sure everyone is a good international citizen, meaning the countries, meaning the territories, whatever they end up being. But if DJT owns Oz, which he does, there's a good chance he owns Venezuela as well. And it could become a territory, it could become a state. There's a lawful basis to it. Does he want that responsibility? Well, I don't know. The Western Hemisphere, imagine if the entire Western Hemisphere, North and South America, are one entity. Is that crazy? It's completely doable. Is it desirable? Different story. So again, it's designed to grab attention. It's designed to distract. It's designed to compel people to examine and think about the future. And whether it happens or not, is really neither here nor there. It's this constant educative process that Derek is a master at, for example, this educative process, which all of this reveal is. And that's why it seems to be taking so long. Why hasn't anything happened? A lot's happened, and a lot's coming out. But there's this educative process where people begin to understand that they know very little about what's actually going on, and they need to have these conversations. They need to ask questions. They need to begin to understand who they are and how they wish to be governed. And it's up to them. They can no longer, I think it was you, John, that said it earlier, they can't just pass it off to somebody else to take care of anymore. We must all, every one of us on this planet, become deeply engaged. Now, I know that seems like a long drift away from Venezuela becoming the 51st state. But again, this is the military panel, and wars are fought at many levels in many different ways. When you're leading a squad and you're you're pinned down by a 14.7 machine gun and you can't move, that's pretty important. But if you go back to the general's map, that's minor patrol activity. Does that mean they don't care about the soldiers? Of course they do. But they have countless similar examples around the planet. This war is exactly the same. What looks profoundly important and will grab your attention strategically might be completely irrelevant, or it might be completely critical. You don't know. You never know. But that's the nature of this war. It has multiple phases. It has multiple approaches. That DJT ad you played at the beginning, Dr. Don talking about Trump derangement syndrome. That's warfare. It is the most exquisitely produced neurocognitive weapon out there. It is informing the way we perceive DJT. It is affecting the way we perceive his detractors. We laugh and it just goes in. And without getting too technical, whenever you're watching something you know that is a fiction, it bypasses the message, bypasses the prefrontal cortex. There's no critical decision. We willingly suspend our disbelief, which is the art of the good storyteller. You get the listener to willingly suspend their disbelief, give consent to accepting the story. And it goes straight to the back of the brain and it's locked in there. There's Dr. Don and derangement syndrome. That's warfare. Pure and simple, nothing different.
Mhm.
And it's getting straight to the mind to the adversaries. So please understand, Venezuela, 51st state, yeah, maybe, maybe not. Doesn't really matter. What have we learnt by that crazy statement?
Wow, intriguing dialogue. Thank you. Before we go through the panel on this, just since I've got you in the hot seat, if you will, Colonel Bosi, we've seen 56 stars on certain flags. We've heard through the administration 56 states. Coattailing off of Venezuela, if you were to speculate, which would be the six?
I don't know all six, but I can tell you this: Australia is going to be one. We're going to be one of the territories, if not a state. I don't think we'll become a state. I think a territory will stay that way. The others, I'm not exactly sure, and I hesitate to speculate because there are so many possibilities.
Sure.
Because there are more slabs of land out there that have strategic import, and that's the measure. Which of these, what we now call countries, have genuine strategic importance to Trump's national security strategy? If you read that whole document in its entirety, and again, I'll use Australia because it's a really good example. Why is Australia so important? You know, we're a carbuncle on the arse end of the planet. We're not even the Appalachian cousins, and yet why are we getting so much attention? Well, our geostrategic location in terms of Indo-Pacific hegemony is critical. We're the greatest aircraft carrier that anybody could possibly have to dominate maybe 40% of the Earth from here. It's fantastic. It's got all the resources you need. Its proximity to Antarctica and everything that implies. All the resources, we should be richer than Saudi Arabia. This is why the Rothschilds want to establish Australia as their home base for the next 1,000 years. It's the reason why we've been kept fat, dumb, and happy. Tiny population, more interested in beer and football and barbecue than actually analysing the fundamentals of national power and then marshalling those elements of national power into creating a great nation. And so this thing called Australia is so important. Not the Australian people. Yes, in a broader sense, we're a Western Christian Anglophone nation, and which is culturally important, but not really. We're going to be honest about it. Our contribution has been meaningful for a small group, but it's geostrategically critical to the future of the planet. Now, that's the metric by which you want to say which of those 6 stars actually you can put a pin on the map and say this one. You got to understand the needs of the Western Hemisphere into the future, where each nation is struggling to re-establish itself as a semi-autonomous, independent grouping of people called a nation state, the nation being the people, the state being the political apparatus that runs it. And so you can guess. As I said, I won't hazard a guess as to the others because I haven't got enough of a grip of yet those major strategic issues that only the white hats know. And we're sort of blindly in the dark trying to grasp what it is. I mean, that'd be a fun game, which are the 6, and you might be right. But I think Australia's one, and the metric, as I said, just to finish on this point, the metric is which is critical to the moral, lawful functioning of the planet for the next 1,000 years. We're at this critical point in history where what we do today and in the next decade or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 will establish a foundation for the planet for the next 1,000 years. And the forces involved are not going to get it wrong. Let's put it that way.
Wow, thank you, sir. And you alluded to earlier on about off-world activity or galactic support and so forth as part of the great changes that are taking place. We're going to visit that at the end of this broadcast in some detail. Thank you, sir. Colonel Lennox, sir, how would you like to weigh in on the Venezuela 51st state notion? And, the president has dropped a whole lot of comms over the last couple of years and then kind of walked away. We've got Greenland out there. We got Canada up here. We've got Cuba over here. Now we got Venezuela over here. What's your view of this? Again, it's all speculation. As Colonel Bosi stated, the White Hats and the military and the commander-in-chief kind of know what's down the pike. We're speculating. What's your speculation, sir?
I don't believe Venezuela will be a state, but I do believe it could become a protectorate for some period of time, because there are pieces of Australia. For example, they just knocked off the kingpin of the drug trafficking out of Venezuela in the last couple of weeks, and they don't have an infrastructure to support their country because they've had too many crooks running the show. So, but I would guess it'd be closer to a protectorate than it would be to a state, because we'd want to give it back to them because it's not strategically close. Colonel Bosi talked about Australia as a corporation. Well, do you know who owns all the stock that was traded on the New York Stock Exchange? The United States owns all the stock of Australia. And therefore, Australia, I don't believe will become a state, but it could become a protected territory in order to get the right people in charge and to get rid of the, what do you call them? My mind went blank. You've got
the Masonic filth. The Masonic filth.
Yeah. But I do believe that Canada will definitely become a state, the United States, probably already is. And I think Greenland will become a part of the United States because the Danes can't protect it from becoming part of the United States. And nobody in Europe's going to come challenge the United States over Greenland. Mexico may well become a part of the United States as well. We don't know. You could speculate about lots of places, but I do not believe that we will go that far into South America in making states out of Venezuela, a state out of Venezuela. Maybe protectorate for 20 years or something like that.
Thank you, sir. So we're talking about states. Continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't see, I've just speculated on a bunch of different places. Cuba will not become a state, I don't believe. I believe Cuba will become a protected area until it can get back to being the gambling center of the Caribbean. It was a great place for people to go visit. And then all of a sudden the communists took over. We're going to give you all the free stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the people got no free stuff. They still have 1955 cars running around on the streets. And so
Crazy.
Cuba will get fixed, but I don't think it'll be a state. Because we own Puerto Rico and we haven't made it a state either. So
good point. Interesting that we're having this discussion, gentlemen, and to our viewers, how it all plays out. Protected state, protected territory, or a territory of the country, or an actual state, and we've thrown a lot of potential countries up on the board. But just the fact that we're having these discussions, something's brewing, something's happening, and it's a fascinating time. Same question. We go to Captain Rob Cunningham. And for those watching the broadcast, Rob just joined us. You can learn more about Rob Cunningham by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on Contributors tab. Scroll down a bit. You'll see Rob's photo, his biography, and a link to follow Rob beyond this broadcast. Welcome, sir. What's your take on expanding territories, protected areas, and states?
Well, first of all, gentlemen, please forgive me for my tardiness. Had a little family issue and had to run and take care of that. Everything's fine, but I do hate being late and being tardy, so I apologize. I can't help but look at the world as we've been speaking, and I've been listening intently, as kind of a 7 tribes. If you think back into the Middle East days, and what would those 7 tribes be? We would have the Western Hemisphere, we would have Asia, we'd have Europe, right? We would have the Middle East, we'd have Russia and Eurasia, we'd have Africa and South Asia and the East Asia, Oceania. I mean, I'm not saying that's the way it's going to be, but to Colonel Bosi's point, it changes all the time. Nations and states and empires and regions and powers, it's a shifting type of thing. But the big picture to me, we talked about who are we and whose are we and who runs this world, right? There's kind of 2 operating systems in this world. One, it runs on the lawgivers' principles and laws that are eternal, indivisible, and indestructible. They just are, and they always will be. The other entity runs on profit and loss. 2 different P&Ls. The money changers are the masters that want to control everything, kill everything, treat us as chattel, assets on a balance sheet, and they're godless entities that have no soul in them whatsoever. And then there's God's people. If we know who we are and whose we are, we know how to live by divine principles and laws. That's the ongoing struggle through the history of mankind. The 2 masters. We can't serve 2. One runs a P&L and one gave us principles and laws. And we're destroyed as a people due to our lack of knowledge of who we are, what the principles and laws are, and what's the nature of the adversary that we have to fight on a 24/7 basis. If we're not aware that who the enemy is, it's kind of like at a poker table. If you don't know who the mark is, you're it, right? So when I look at this unfolding operation, this military governance that Derek has done just a brilliant job awakening so many people's eyes, connecting so many dots. And before I forget, I want to tee it up there. I believe we saw a calm reference today to both Q drop number 1 and number 2. And I'd like to run those by Derek when we get a chance to get there. But we're in a spiritual war. The battlefield is our mind. That's where this war is being fought. It's a psychological war, a spiritual war, and a mental war. And we've got to wake people up as to how this world's designed and how we, have to operate, what our internal operating system ought to be. That being said, energy is the source of everything on the physical world. We need the energy. The energy in Venezuela is incredibly valuable. If we don't have some type of ownership or protectorate or alliance or partnership, it's either going to be under the control of us with our principles and laws, or the other side is going to have control and access and benefit to the energy reserves and the land and everything that comes out of Venezuela. So unfortunately, it's kind of a binary situation. We either export standards around the world that are universal, that create abundance and create peace and create truth and transparency, like a distributed ledger technology, our operating system around the world has got to be built on honest weights and measures, or it's an abomination. According to the laws, dishonest weights and measures is an abomination. So we have to measure laws and principles. Honest weights and measures is not just a money thing. That is not just limited to the Coinage Act and how much gold and silver is in a dollar. Honest weights and measures is a guy with a dongle is a guy, not a girl, right? A border is a border. A citizen's a citizen. 2 + 2 = 4. Life is life. You know, we're not human bags of flesh. We're spiritual beings that happen to have a human body. But the spiritual laws are what apply to us, not what the swamp in Washington, D.C. spits out like the Federal Reserve prints fake money. Rules and edicts and codes and mandates and scripts. They spit all this stuff out to keep us in a fog. So I think the most important architecture that I see here is things are the world's light switch is being turned on by the commander in chief. Now, we have to help people process what it means. Who are we? How do we get to where we are? What lessons have we learned? And how can we? I go back to the scripture. It talks about, you know, the harvest is plenty and the workers are few. The rest of our lives, until we take our last breath, there's going to be people that hopefully, you know, will be curious and humble enough to ask questions and actually want to learn. And hopefully we'll be able to serve them. We can't save everybody. We can't force our knowledge on other people. But this is a recurring lesson. I mean, they nailed Christ to a tree 5 days after he exposed, you know, fake money changers in a temple protected by politicians screwing the people. He exposed that godless money system, power system, and control system, and they nailed him to a tree 5 days later. You know, Trump, since he came down the escalator, I'm not making a moral equivalency here, but he is exposing the same type of RICO global syndicate that's all about power, money, and control. They could give two damns about whether they bioweapon half of us off the planet or not. They would rather have control than surrender to God's people. So that's really the war that we're at. And I just don't know that we can. It'd be foolish of us to turn our back or somehow disconnect from Venezuela with its oil reserves and let it get into the hands of our adversary.
Thank you. So you raised so many good points there. Thank you very much. And such powerful words, who we are and whose we are. Michael, Jaco, if you want to pick it up from here, speculative states, territories, protective areas.
So Venezuela, I don't see it as a state. It's been communism. It's been communist for way too long. It would be hard to, like, you know, change them. Same with Cuba. But I see them in the future being protectorates or territories. Now, the earthquake we just had in Venezuela, I think, was a warning from the deep state, because we know that they have a massive HARP system in Antarctica. And I think they caused that earthquake as basically punishment, because President Trump has been, you know, using them as you know, as a see what we've done with your little puppet. So they showed us a little bit. You know, they still have capabilities. Those capabilities, I believe, are you know, fast receding. You look at the skies behind me if you can see them. But for the last several weeks, we have not had any chemtrails. And in California, I've heard that chemtrails are gone. And I was just in California for several days. And before that, probably a month or so ago, I haven't seen any chemtrails down in California either. So it seems like we are somewhat winning a war. I've heard that daily there are 3 earthquakes that are striking Antarctica. And that's from the White Hats. If you look around, you're not going to see earthquakes on Antarctica, so there's no USGS, you know, little monitoring stations on Antarctica that I know of. But we are seeing around Antarctica at a depth of about 10 kilometers, which is normally the depth of DUMS or maglev tunnels, and you're constantly seeing these earthquakes that are happening around Antarctica, and I believe that's because we're striking their maglev tunnels. So we've seen also I've had reports from people that said that uh, Germans have like shown up at U.S. stations uh, unannounced, have just shown up, groups of them, and that's in there. We had to leave, and our base was destroyed or something, and so there's this happening. So it's there's more and more of these anomalies that are happening in Antarctica. So the war is on. We've talked about it for quite some time. There's different factions, that are being taken out throughout the Earth. And Antarctica, last year, Edwano Saban, who's been on our shows quite often, he was down there with a cruise for a week or so. Who knows what they were discussing down there? But it is interesting to see. There seems to be a lot of pressure on Antarctica. Going all the way back into the 1800s, 1870s, when the Germans went to Argentina and built Bavarian villages. There's 4 major Bavarian villages in Antarctica, and Hitler and Eva Braun were seen at a hotel after supposedly they died in the Fuhrer bunker. And even the Russians that came in and looked at the dental work said that that wasn't Hitler or Eva Braun. So these things that are trying to bring consciousness up are happening. We're exposing them. This is such a great group. That's why I've loved to be involved in this. The Captain Bird fleet that went down in 47, I think it was 46, 47. They experienced some anomalies from flying saucers that had directed energy weapons, basically, and they had to hightail it back out of there. So 4,700 sailors and Marines that went down there, 13 ships, 33 aircraft were sent, tail between their legs and running away. So have we reached a point of equilibrium with these people that have had these advanced, systems? Yes, and even more advanced than they are now. So it is a war. We're destroying their capabilities. I think that the HARP system will be destroyed at some point. But we're probably going to see some more earthquakes. I think California is due for, unfortunately, a major earthquake, and we've seen a lot of activity that's been happening in California. So if we get a major earthquake in California, that's really going to piss off the white hats quite a bit, and so we see this thing kick up to another level. So that's some of the things that I'm looking at now. As far as Canada, I think that Alberta will probably be the first state, and then it will expand from there. So we won't have different states. In Canada, it will be one state eventually. Greenland, I think, will be a state, and all of Mexico, Central and South America, at some point will be part of the United States, protectorate or states or something along those lines.
Thank you, Michael. Great information, and again, great changes underway. Derek, your views on states and protective nations and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with the same thing. I mean, we can rename anything anytime we want, but I think a lot of President Trump is just bringing highlight to the region for other reasons that's we've already talked about many times in multiple facets on multiple different panels. Venezuela, obviously key, as Ricardo said about the oil. We know that's a very key factor with President Trump, but also with the Dominion systems. This elections, the way they have kept the deep state, the way they've kept their people in place is by cheating, as President Trump says. It's not real complicated for the target audience, but the target audience is under these mechanisms. As I love that word that we were using earlier with Israel, it's a mechanized system, right? And it's meant to capture them. It's meant to capture the target audience and keep them delusional over here on these things. But something like simple like Antarctica, even though we're hopping straight off of Venezuela here, going to Antarctica, how is it that we've got all these nations for all these years that have come together and agreed not to go there, right? The average person cannot go to Antarctica. Why? Why can't a guy hop in his aircraft, a $2 or $3 million aircraft that's capable of flying there and back just for a quick run? Why has it been off limits for so many people? When you think about that level of control, it should show people that, hey, there's things that you don't know about that others, especially here on this panel, do. I caught an aircraft just the other day leaving New Zealand, headed south, right? Headed south to Antarctica, goes off the radar about probably 5 or 10 miles out. It always goes off the radar right there. Also, Venezuela, a lot of special operations aircraft been in and out of Venezuela. Our aircraft over to Panama and then up to El Salvador and Belize and different regions. Back and forth, back and forth. I caught a Guantanamo aircraft leaving Guantanamo Bay going to El Salvador just about probably a week and a half ago. So we have a lot of movement down there that are extracurricular, meaning our special operators, special operations, etc. Netherlands. The Netherlands have a joint a partnership with Venezuela with the Coast Guard, and the Netherlands have been operating on the coastline off and on very heavily, along with our special operation Dornier aircraft down there. And I try to tell people just on the simple, before you get jump nosedive, go off into the deep reading and deep studying and just studying aircraft and our operations. You wouldn't have the Netherlands operating with Venezuela, and then the Netherlands coming over to our National Guard bases, and there'd be some kind of discrepancy there that President Donald John Trump would be very well versed on what's going on, and that wouldn't happen. So there's a lot of things that are kind of simple, but kind of outside the box thinking that can just show that, hey, this is all a planned operation. But it's also strategic in so many ways because of the oil, but the money, the fiat. And then it goes back to like Captain Ross talking about, you gotta know who you are. All right. You gotta know what's going on. You have to always want to read. You have to want to study. And I think so many Americans, which is by design, so many Americans are so afraid of being wrong about something versus going, hey, what's our identity? Why are we here? Why do we fuss? Why do we argue? Why do we debate? Why do we have these conversations? If you're listening to this, then you have some level of awareness that you want to know something. And you have to kind of bridge that gap too with your friends and family. Sometimes you have to push the bar a little bit with them, especially if they're complaining about something or whining. You should say, hey, what are you whining for if you really don't want to know? So there's a lot of that going on, and that's why it's a multifaceted operation, which always leads to a 2 or 3 hour discussion because there's so many different facets going on, and that's what President Trump is the face of. That is what makes 45-47 so brilliant, strategic, irregular, unconventional, but biblical, historical, and monumental for the spiritual aspect first and always of what we're taking down across the world. But like I show people in this book right here, like I was showing earlier, a military government doesn't mean that it's just a guaranteed win. It is in another manner this time around because of who it is, what it is, how big it is, the complexity of it, and what they're taking down. But it doesn't mean that, only a few of us are supposed to do the operations or know what's going on just because we love it, just because we seem to be so well versed. That's the element of what every American right now, but also around the world is supposed to be. Elevating that level of consciousness, like Jaco talks about. You got to elevate. And when you think about President Trump and you think about what he does daily, he'll put this attention on Venezuela. He'll color in, have an inlay of the American flag on Venezuela. He'll do that to Canada. He's done that to Greenland. When you think of all the places he's done this and the attention he's bringing, if you could think of a world without President Trump, now liberals right now would love that. But as Dan Scavino says, don't let the 10% make you think they're the 90. They're not. But if you could think of a world without President Trump right now, and you remove President Trump and you remove everything that he's brought to social media, everything he's brought to your life, everything he's brought to the media, the platform, the stage, everything, the military, when you think about that, and then you think of putting someone back in from days of old. If you think of putting a George W. back in or something like that, into the old system. When you really think about what we've elevated to already, people have already seen, when people say they haven't seen anything or, oh, I don't see anything, nothing's happening, you just don't realize what all you have witnessed until you remove something, right? So if you could just, you know, take President Trump away for a moment, then you'll realize what all he has done and what we're doing and how far we've gone and where we're going and where we're headed. Uh, because, like the election systems, I've been explaining that to some friends down in Florida where I've been staying the last week, that when you take the election systems alone, and you take Venezuela and the Dominion systems, it's something as simple as technology. All they got to do is remove votes, add votes. It's just a technology. Then you got to be able to prove that they were added or deleted. It's real simple when it comes to application at first, when you think of it. It's complex when you think of the systems itself and how to capture that. But it's real simple explaining to people what has already taken place right in front of you. President Trump and the Venezuelan whole topic. He's already taken control of everything. He's already said that. And now we're sending all of our aid down to Venezuela. So the area is clear. It's all taken care of. But when you look at the geopolitical and then the financial portions of it, the bigger picture moving forward, then you look into the whole deep state. There's not going to be a deep state. President Trump's already shown this. He's already shown that captivity of that because of the system. The 7 swing states already show that. The same 7 swing states, the 2024 were the same with 2020. That's never happened before in history. All right, so he lost all 7 the first time and he won all 7 the second, right? And then he just happens to have a Supreme Court case with him. So when you think of what the Supreme Court's doing, right, people think like today, losing the birthright citizenship. Now, President Trump says that's a big deal to lose that, and they should have stood ground on constitutional grounds. But then he says, no big deal. Congress can take care of this, right? This is a Congress thing. This is a congressional thing. All right. Well, the average person out there is still hanging on the Supreme Court doing this. Let's say a Republican, because they'd be mad. They read this and they're all upset. Well, then when you look at the Supreme Court, though, over here, President Trump goes and wins 7 swing states, and never before in United States election history were the swing states, period, whatever number, the same swing states in the next election. But right in the middle here is a Supreme Court case that President Trump filed via the state of Texas, a state he's never lived in. All right, the state of Texas, the big, what I was talking about earlier with Texas, how big it is to the GDP of the U.S. And what they were before they were a state. They were a Republic of Texas. All right, so when you look at this little court case right in the middle of those two things, all right, and then you got to look at the timing. Executive Order 13848 was September the 12th, 2018. All right, that was 2 months before the first election of the primary then. All right, so you have 2018, then you have 2020, then you have 22, and you have 24. Right? And all the National Guard were deployed at every one of those elections. All right. And then all of a sudden, this past year, the mainstream media tried to say that the National Guard were not deployed to the elections. It's like, okay, this is a play on everything, because here's the articles right here and all the dot mil sites showing how the National Guard were deployed. All right, so this is bringing attention to it. So even losing like the birthright citizenship, well, if all of a sudden the narrative is to focus on what's constitutional and what's unconstitutional, then guess what we can pull out? Well, the military government's constitutional. Military occupation's constitutional. National Guard deployment's constitutional. Active duty is constitutional. Title 10, Joint Publication 3-57 tells you that the president doesn't need um, authorization. This book right here tells you that a president doesn't need congressional authorization. And our military laws supersede, they come long before the Constitution and long before the Declaration of Independence. So it's the setup, it's the scenario of what's taking place. And see, and President Trump showing the 65%. So this is how you tie it all in. He says, I have 65% approval rating. Well, that's going up, and that's higher than ever before in history, way higher. So see the narrative, what they're spinning and playing. It may look like losses over here, but some of these losses may actually bring out validation, but also bring out the revelation for the people. Because you can't use the Constitution one moment and then turn around and say it's unconstitutional in another moment, especially the military. So there's a lot of play on with what's going on to bring that attention to people. You got to get people's attention. And President Trump said it. All of us here, we hate drama because we're all military guys. We don't like drama. We deal with straight up facts and we remove our emotions, we remove our feelings, and we can tackle things that way. But the American people, the target audience, they love drama. Let's just be honest. They love drama. So President Trump has a quote. You got to give them what they want. So you have to do it this way. And unfortunate for patriots out there who love to read and study, you just have to come along on the ride with us and sit back and kind of laugh at them in another kind of manner, even though we like them, love them, and we do believe in unity. But you kind of have to sit back over here and be with the real cowboys and let all these other stage acts over here react and go hysterical and do whatever they're going to do. But they'll come to the realization because it's a bait and switch. President Trump is a bait and switch. Every bit of this is a bait and switch because there's a law or an order somewhere over here that's already showing you. Venezuela, I pulled it up just to read it word for time manner, but Executive Order 14373, which was January 2026, President Trump declared a national emergency with Venezuela. And it says preventing Venezuelan oil funds in U.S. Treasury accounts from being seized through judicial processes. So there's your judicial again. And every bit of right now, I've shown people this kind of what Rob was talking about, the military government, like the plan. 2017 to 2021, President Trump declared all these unique national emergencies. They're not just normal national emergencies or, something that would be a standard national emergency. They're unique, and they're unique that go into a blueprint for a military government, military occupation, continuity government, etc. 2017 to 2021 was the resetting of the legislative branch. And the laws show this. 21 to 2025, when the whole world thought Joe was real and all that, he was stumbling and babbling and falling and scratching his butt and doing all these things that you never saw a president do before. That was all theater of the puppet government, and then the military government doing the real things back here, but distracting people. Because as we know in the military, we don't like distractions. And what would have happened had they forecasted most of the things that we were doing? You would have people out there rubbernecking like they do on the interstate when there's an accident. We don't need that. We need efficiency and effectiveness quick. We need to get in and do what we're doing quick because we only had that 4 years extra. So in reality, 12 years to do what would have taken 8 lawfully. But we didn't have time to stop and tell the people, like Rob's talking about, educate them on, hey, by the way, Article 2 of the Constitution never mentions term limits. And in 1951, Congress violated that and all that. We didn't have time to do that. So you do this lawful, unconventional, irregular tactic. So 21 to 2025 was a resetting of the executive branch. And there's a FEMA and Department of Homeland Security document that explains this reconstitution of the executive branch. Came out January the 1st, 2021. Oh, how convenient. Right before the 3 cannons that quote unquote Joe had, which is not a 21 gun salute, it's a funeral service. All right, so all that. Right now, 2025 to 2029 is the resetting of the judicial branch. That's why it is judge, court, district court this, district court that. By the way, June last year, the Supreme Court, there's the same Supreme Court ruled that U.S. district judges cannot put any kind of injunctions on president. They cannot block President Trump on any kind of national injunction. All right. What have you been seeing? U.S. federal district judges blocking President Trump everywhere. They're straight up violating the highest law of the land, but they got to show that to the people. And that's why I've been showing that lately. So 2025 to 2029 is a resetting of the judicial branch. And there you go. You see President Trump listing the very top at Venezuela with the Treasury, not the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, and then judicial. So it's a fight, but it's a fight that's captured, and we're going to win it, as President Trump says. But for the target audience, they have to hear that narrative out there almost as if it's a doomsday because they have to get them involved, they have to get them engaged, and then they have to educate them, and that's where we come in.
Wow, thank you, Derek, for unpacking all that incredible information and connecting the dots for us all on the critical issues of this operation that we are witnessing, certainly the target audience and others. And for all viewers, what's sort of meant by the target audience? Some people have been asking us on social places, what do we mean by that? In the past, we've used terms like sheeple and normies, and basically, it's people that aren't fully up to speed on the real world we're living in and what's actually going on. And now we're not talking about the crazies with the blue hair and all those people. They'll be scraped off scraped off the street later, or God will deal with them. We're talking about just folks that are not fully aware and up to speed because of all the dumbed down propaganda and brainwashing we've all endured. We love you. We're here to help you. And that's what Derek is referring to, the target audience. It's people that are just kind of looking around. Maybe they're still watching fake Fox News, but they're coming down to our space. Actually, we should say up to our space, but coming down to our spaces and looking around in the quote podcaster and alternative news world. Welcome aboard, target audience, because here you're getting an awakening, and you're getting facts, and you're getting brilliant analysis from incredible men that serve this nation honorably and continue to do so today. Thank you, Derek Johnson. In the interest of time, there's 3 more subjects I've got to take on, but let's be as brief as we can on these subjects. Each of them we could easily spend an hour on, but we're moving. The clock is moving. So, incidentally, we're going to go back to the top of the panel, and somewhat noteworthy. Someone counted how many times in the past few months that President Trump has posted references to Q, and it's like 20 or 30 times in the public square. And that's just, I want to just put that out there to the Q naysayers. But then we get this. President Trump signs an executive order unleashing American quantum technologies innovation. This is an area this panel may or may not care to weigh in on too much, but whatever you do know, what is the meaning and significance behind this executive order, quantum technologies innovation? How does it tie into the plan? And again, let's be brief if we can, gentlemen, starting at the top of the panel with Colonel Bosi.
Thanks, John. Very quickly, the best way to paint this picture is this: quantum is not conventional science. It's at a whole new level, and things are very, very different. Having said that, the best way to paint this picture is, you've seen Star Trek, where the Enterprise lobs onto a planet, and Spock says, "Captain, it's a Class M planet. It's Earth-like. There's intelligent life down there, but not as we know it." And we have a bit of a giggle, and Spock and the team sort of help out this developing species on the planet. That's where we are, except we're the Class M planet with the intelligent life, but not as we know it type. We have a, in a galactic sense, not an entirely unique, but a connection to the Almighty that some species just don't have. And I'm going to dive into some big areas here very quickly. And so we're of immense importance, but we're also of immense interest to other intelligent life forms. They have capacities beyond our comprehension. We are going to be moving into that. It's like we've got bows and arrows, and they have phasers. That's how we are. So what DJT is saying is, we are taking control of this immensely complex capacity within innovation and science, and we're going to get control of that to make sure we transition this in a way that is beneficial for human life on Earth. Because what we have here is a potential existential threat to human life on Earth in all its ways. This transition to genuine quantum perspective on technology specifically. To this point, there is a court case being brought by John and Jane Doe against Palantir, against its founder Peter Thiel and CEO Alex Karp, alleging the company is now trespassing into the human mind using AI and other technologies to predict human behavior, affect human behavior, and interfere with our right to our minds. Now, this is way out there, but I mention that simply because this is what DJT is saying. There's a world out there that you don't know about. Some of it will be revealed. Some may never be revealed. He's got a hold of it, and we're going to transition through this extremely challenging time We've got a steady hand on the tiller. That's DJT and his team. They've got the steady hand on the tiller, and we're going to be okay. There are conversations we need to have as people. We need to understand this problem at a level which concerns us, so we have our wits about us. This is not one of those subjects where we can hand it off to somebody else to fix, and we go back to beer, football, and barbecues. So that's what the big picture, that's why I think he's communicating with this. We will take control of the quantum future.
Thank you, sir. Same question to Colonel Tom Lennox. President Trump's Quantum Technologies Innovation Executive Order. What does it mean to you?
It starts with the financial system, quantitative financial system. It goes to things like the med beds at a level, and then it goes into the education. It goes into the even the voting system, quantum, because the quantum technologies that he's seen from our Palladian and other partners in this alliance that he's got, and that he's seen as the commander of the Galactic Federation military, that he understands far beyond what we can understand how critical it is to have a hand on that quantum technology things, the little things. They call it the rods of God. Some people will call those things the rods of God. They're quantum physics-based capabilities that he knows are out there. He knows that Tesla had a handle on a lot of them 150 years ago, 120 years ago. He knows that there are other people who've had a hand on a lot of them, and he wants us to have a handle on as many of them as possible, and working in conjunction with our alliance partners. That's my thoughts
Sir.
on the quantum.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Captain Rob, your views?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical to understand the nature of this latest quantum executive order this is a whole of government approach. I believe that President Trump is treating quantum as infrastructure in every ecosystem. What I mean by that, this is not build a faster computer. This is understanding the significance of quantum physics, quantum matter, quantum energy, the quantum applications when it comes to research, manufacturing, agriculture, software, networking, health, encryption, workforce development, national security, commercial development. Quantum science and quantum physics is all about energy. And our nature, we're made in the image and likeness of God. God is a spiritual energy. And if that energy is quantum infinite, I mean, the more we know we don't know. It's like every time we go out and pick up a grain of sand, we look up, we go, oh, damn, there's a Sahara Desert. How many grain of sands are there? If we take that grain of sand and think of it as something that we might know in our head, people will get 10 grains of sand and they think they're all that in a bag of chips. You know, we will never learn all the things that we need to know and need to learn about quantum physics and the creation of this universe. But this is a sounding alarm. I mean, he opened quantum.gov in his first term. I will tell you 2 weeks into office in early 2017, when President Trump issued a Executive Order 13772, and he outlined 7 core principles for a brand new, if you will, quantum financial system. He ordered the Treasury to start to work on it. You can bet your rear end he understood quantum encryption, 3 to 5 second settlement, instantaneous compliance, regulatory, ledgering and settling and custody and identity, and all the things that are necessary to make this emerging new monetary system come into being. President Trump just didn't accidentally pull out 7 random things on a piece of paper on a 1-page executive order on February the 3rd of 2017 and ask his Treasury Department to just, why don't y'all go white paper this and see what you come up with. He's known about quantum technologies and energy, vibration, and frequency, and the things that Nikola Tesla, found and researched and patented and shared with the world. And isn't it unique that even earlier this week and late last week, he was fielding questions about his uncle that was 35 years with MIT as a heralded quantum physicist, and taking questions about, his uncle and Nikola Tesla's estate. So we have to understand, from now this point to the rest of civilization, quantum physics, quantum encryption, quantum data, quantum computers, quantum artificial intelligence, quantum governance. A lot of people sometimes will forget this. Can you imagine coding AI agents that cannot drift from the essence of the Declaration of Independence, the life and the liberty and the pursuit of happiness, and the unalienable rights that we have from our Creator cannot be validated. And those agents monitor every bill, statute, code, regulation any legislative body ever tries to pass in any state and gives it a yes or a no. It's either atomically settled as constitutional or not. That'd be a pretty damn good AI intelligence engine to have sovereign governance protection coded into the fabric of American society, and for that matter, coded into the society of 195 nations if we could make it happen. So I say that because I hear all the people in social media chirping about, oh God, mark of the beast, crypto's terrible, just give me my money and gold. I'm not touching any of that stuff. Well, good luck with that mindset, because it's not going to serve you well. We're not putting this quantum computing genie back in the bottle. We all better get with the program.
Thank you, Captain Rob. Great points there. If you think about it, one thing that I'd like to comment on that you just shared with us, when you think about the talking points, you were saying the press is asking the president these questions about Tesla and his uncle and 35 years ago. To our audience, don't you find that to be good news? Because we've been discussing this for years behind the scenes, all of us, right? Yes. And now it's reached press rooms before the commander-in-chief and the executive branch, president of the United States. Don't tell me we're not making progress. Thank you, Captain Rob. Michael, Jaco, quantum technology innovation, the significance behind President Trump's executive order.
Yeah, so the free energy that's coming from the quantum realm, the anti-gravitics that we're starting to see, they're starting to be revealed. The moon base that we're going to see that we've been involved in a long time. Ganymede, the largest moon in the solar system that we've been on for a very long time. If you look at Jupiter, you could put 1,300 Earths inside of Jupiter. We have mini bases within each of the planets, within our own planet. So we're going to start to see all of this. This is part of the quantum realm that's coming up. It's fascinating. Supercomputers that run ships, and all kinds of crazy stuff. People that interact with ships consciously, that's coming to the forefront. We're going to see all of these things. It's quantum realm, and it's fantastic. 500 years more advanced than what we're seeing right now is about to be revealed to us. So it's an exciting time. I I've been talking about, the super soldier program for quite some time. A lot of us are having memories of that program that's been, revealed by more and more people. So it's unbelievable. Millions of us have been involved in these programs. Our consciousness gets, wiped so that we don't remember this. But as you age, like myself, then you start to have these memories come back. So a lot of us have been involved in it. Maybe a few people here, have some memories that are coming back. So that's one of the beautiful things about this quantum reality that we're moving into.
Thank you, Michael. We're going to close out our global defense war with the files that are being released by the administration right now, by the military, the president, which is a perfect dovetail from what we're all just talking about. But we want Derek rather, to weigh in as well. Quantum technology innovation and this executive order. What does it mean to you, Derek?
Well, I love what Rob said, getting into the spiritual form of it. I think that people out there talking about the target audience, I didn't come here to preach, but I will preach. But I think you'd have a lot more to worry about by not being a soldier and becoming a part of what God has given us versus being scared of something. Because if you're reading the Bible, there's nothing to be scared of. If you see what's going on lawfully with President Trump, you'd see that this is actually pretty biblical and it's in our favor. It's nothing to be afraid of. I also think that maybe something a little bit more unconventional is that now JFK, he wanted special operations in every branch of the military. He wanted every soldier to be that high elevated right here, not just boots on the ground and not just tough and gruff and looking like Jaco over here and all the muscles he's got, but he wanted it right here. He wanted every soldier. So when you look at what's going on, Hedseth, there was an article this week about Hedseth must have had some experience in the army and he's taking this personal and he's wiping out and all he wants is yes men. Well, yeah, we do want yes men because if the commander in chief's doing what the commander in chief's supposed to be doing, then every officer under the commander in chief is supposed to be doing what the commander in chief's supposed to be doing. And if the commander in chief goes against the laws and the regulations of the military, then you'll have all of those yes men going, no. Then they'll say no. So the military is supposed to look uniform like that. It is supposed to be a rank structure like that. So when you look at the dynamic of the military, we're going away from everything that we've always been a part of or were we supposed to be a part of it. Like we're talking about technology and Nikola Tesla and all the things that's been around for years. I was just telling someone this week that we've had drones since the 40s and the 50s. And they were like, what? I'm like, yeah, go look it up. We've had these things. And then you look at the dynamic of God, you look at the dynamic of the Bible and how all the Bible has been redrafted through the years, and just little words have been changed, to or for or and all these little different things have been changed through the years. And thank God there's some books that have been preserved that have made it through the hands of time and going like, well, maybe our founders did think a little differently. Maybe our forefathers did think a little differently, our ancestors, etc. So when you get into the mind of the military, and then of course Colonel Lennox here is an expert in this field of quantum, and he's also summed it up very very well one time on one of our panels where he summed it really quick. And Lieutenant Colonel Bosi was like, "Man, if you can't say it that quick, then you probably don't know what the heck you're talking about." But quantum, right? So the technology, the Golden Dome, everything's going away from our traditional military of what people in the target audience thinks of our traditional military. So we're going to have our systems fully functional. And President Trump just mentioned this about, he's like, what is the internet? People never think about what is the internet? Who is the internet? What is it? Where is it? How does it operate? Who functions? Who operates it? So when you think of that, AI, he said it just a week ago, AI is good for the people who use it the correct way. So it still boils back down to people. It always goes back down to people. People corrupt people. It's not organizations, it's not institutions. That's why I'm always taking up for Jaco too. We have these conversations about the CIA and the FBI and all these things. People think, oh, because the entity is corrupt, that the whole thing is corrupt. I'm like, no, people corrupt people. You have to have good soldiers, you have to have good people. God shows this in his word. And it's not always in big numbers. Every bit of every element of God is always a small number going up against a big number. And the small number, because of their faith, took down the big number. So quantum, It also shows President Trump's Executive Order 13885 from the first term. All right. And what people thought that Joe, he terminated it. He didn't terminate it. And there's no mention of the termination of Executive Order 13885 in the law. So it shows you what President Trump said November and December of just this past November and December 2025, that all of the executive actions, this is for the target audience, all of the executive actions of Joe Biden are terminated. All right. When you go look, it said a specific key term in there. And when you go look at the Latin term of it, it's void ab initio. Well, it means it never existed. So he's telling you that 4 years worth never existed in law by quote unquote Joe. If that were true and we were in a normal setting and this wasn't an operation and a president just wiped out 4 years of what is on the Federal Register, still displayed for the target audience because we're not out of the 45, 47 yet. But if you went and looked at the Federal Register and you looked at all the executive orders and national emergencies that the people thought Joe did, and President Trump were to wipe that out with no explanation, and no explanation to all these nations of these national emergencies that were declared, there'd be massive pandemonium with the judicial system. So see, it's not that. And so when people see the bigger 40,000 foot view and you home in on that, this shows a continuation of what President Trump was put here for. So it's a lot bigger. So every aspect is to make your mind get bigger, to grow spiritually, to grow intellectually, to grow physically as well, because it's going to take people getting off their traditional couch, looking at a football game and going and studying and reading a little bit and going, holy crap, I'm truly witnessing a biblical, historical, monumental awakening.
Wow, thank you, Derek, and thank you to this esteemed panel. I'm sure our viewers are, giving the ability to connect a lot of dots on a lot of critical things would be the understatement of a century. Thank you all, gentlemen, very much. What comes to my mind listening to Derek and really the rest of the panel as well with regards to the last question is, we're at a point where spirituality, God, converges and meets with science and technology. That's sort of an underlying theme. Maybe I don't have my words phrased exactly right, but I think you folks get the gist of this. And that takes me to this. I wanted to discuss elections. I had a lot of interesting observations I've pulled from a lot of publicly known sources of what is going on. And this panel has alluded to doubts about the midterms running on time this year. Juan O'Savins well on the record for that. But, in interest of time, we're going to visit the whole election issue next month, folks. So come join the Global Defense panel. Next month, we're going to dive into the election issue in great detail, plus all the things that may transpire concerning that subject between now and then. But this is a perfect dovetail to close out this broadcast. And I'd like to run a short video announcement. And then we're going to dive into off-world activities as it relates to the president now doing what no other president has done, and that's being fully transparent and releasing the UFO alien-related files. Let's run to my producer, run this minute and a half introduction to a new show I'm doing to set the stage and get us all in the zone. We'll be back in one moment.
Since President Dwight D. Eisenhower, top secret files were created concerning off-world activity and visits to planet Earth. Undoubtedly, over the decades, these files have grown. Area 51 is commonly known. We've heard and seen images of UFOs, but not until now has this been validated and presented to the American people and to the world, as President Donald J. Trump released the first tranche of top-secret files. This is the beginning. There's much more to come. Join John Michael Chambers and guests on a new monthly panel, JMC Broadcast, Off-World with JMC. Premiere episode launches Thursday, June 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. And join us on this intriguing and challenging journey together, taking the Great Awakening to new and higher heights. Come travel through the portal with us. Where we go one, we go all.
I sat down with Alex Collier and Colonel Chuck Sellers, uh, often a panel member here, probably joining us next month. I sat down with Alex and Chuck for the premiere episode of Off World with JMC, published just 12 days ago. You can find that on the Rumble channel and on our website. The next episode features Alex Collier, Dr. Michael Sala, and Bishop Jim O'Connor that Derek Johnson introduced me to last year, who also was a Global Defense War panel member. So stay tuned for that. Now, having brought us into that zone, let's go bring the panel back, if we will, to my producer. I don't have any scripted questions to move us through. It is such a broad topic. So just give us your 40,000-foot view statement as we go through the panel about the president releasing, I think it's the third tranche already out there, the fourth one perhaps on its way very soon. I would speculate that as time goes by, more and more we'll call more difficult to confront for some information may be coming out. I find it interesting also at this time. We have Steven Spielberg, whether it's 2.0 Spielberg or Spielberg is a different conversation. But the film Age of Disclosure Day, I think it's called Disclosure Day Spielberg, a big box office smash right out of the gate. That's come out. At the same time, the president is releasing the real files, as Spielberg's is a film, but is it really a film, or is it telling us what's happened and happening? We have other films coming out. The narrative is definitely being raised now about off-world entities, ETs, extraterrestrials, the Galactic Federation, moving through portals, time travel. All of these subjects aren't crazy. It's going to ruffle some feathers in some areas, and understandably so, in our fellow man. Are they demons? Are they fallen angels? The Bible says this, it contradicts that. That's why we're bringing the bishop on the next broadcast to help us navigate through that. But let's have this panel weigh in anywhere you choose from a 40,000-foot view about off-world activity that is now, I consider it, not a distraction. We one last comment, and I'll turn it over to the panel, is we remember, and Juan O'Savin has brought this to our attention, we remember Hillary Clinton back in the day saying to John Podesta, is it time to pull and use the alien card? Now, one can analyze that, but that was going to be used to confuse and distract, scare, fear, and hurt us all. But instead, Trump trumped them and decided to release the actual files in full, honest transparency, responsibly, gradiently to the world. So that's my setup, my commentary on this. There's so much we can get into. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi, my good friend, what's your views? We've covered this on Bosi Briefs, but what's your views on this panel about that subject that I just bundled up for all of us? Take it away, sir.
Thanks, John. I personally find this very exciting. I've, like many, been waiting for this to come out. You can only sit on something for so long. And we all have different experiences, some very little, some life-changing. So the population has been prepared through a series of very innovative TV shows, starting with things like Roddenberry's Star Trek, which was informed, let's say, from elsewhere, because it was too predictive to be just good creative writing, through to Star Wars and the rest of it. So we have generations on the planet that have got no problem with the idea of extraterrestrials. And don't call them aliens, I don't like that. Extraterrestrials, both subterranean as from elsewhere. So a lot of people will find it very exciting. It'll be extremely distressing for those with very strict religious beliefs, extremely challenging. As John alluded, definitions matter. What's an extraterrestrial? What's a fallen angel? Are they the same? Is Messi and Ronaldo a couple of fallen angels, doing their thing? It'll dive into every aspect of life. Most will move through okay. Some will be extremely challenged. The one thing I say, and I'll leave space for other people to talk. The one thing I say is this: God's real. The intelligence outside of space, time, energy, and matter, whatever you want to call it, is real. He's daily involved in our lives and is looking after us. Who says this? Not me. This is the science. If people are confused with ETs and the Supreme Creator, they should read the book The Return of the God Hypothesis by Dr. Stephen Meyer. He analyzes the science behind everything that's occurred on Earth and proves that the only rational explanation for everything that we're experiencing is this Creator, this powerful intelligence outside of space, time, energy, and matter, who is theistic in nature, not deistic. And the difference being this: deistic is that God created the universe and just took his hands off the wheel, and he's wondering what we're going to do with it. Well, the evidence, the science, and even this is from the materialistic and atheistic scientists, even they say that the only reasonable explanation is a theistic model where the Creator is daily involved in our lives. Now, the reason I say that is there's so much to talk about here, but a lot of people are going to need a safety net to fall into. And the first part of that safety net is God is real, and he's more than benevolent. He is everything that you'd want your God to be, in a Christian sense anyway, not a Christian God, but you understand. He's not some lunatic, scimitar-wielding murderer. The second part of that safety net is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, his role is real. So if everything else starts to fall apart, pray to Jesus, pray to God through Jesus. Their lines are open. You'll always get an answer. As Andrew Clavin says, the lines are open and no call is rejected. So I only mention that because people will be challenged. It'll be very exciting, but some will be in trouble. So just pray to the right guy, through the right guy. Pray to the God that Jesus prayed to at Gethsemane. And if you have the challenges, and that'll get you through, and that'll free you up to really begin to experience the absolute wonder that is God's creation. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, sir. So important, very important words. Thank you very much. Colonel Tom Lennox, if you care to weigh in on this subject, I know you know quite a bit about it.
I understand that the Palladians call God the divine creator, and that most of the off-worlders, we'll call them off-worlders, see the divine creator as just that, the divine creator. And they've never seen him. None of us have ever seen him. We know that God created us in his image, and our soul is directly related to God. God is within us. And as we look at the off-world people, we have to understand that they have a relationship with God just like we do. And that the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ, God, they will answer your questions, whatever they might be. When we look at I've seen a couple of the ships. I was driving in Florida, and occasionally you can see a ship that comes out of the clouds. One day with my brother, we saw two of them. I know they're real. I know that Jupiter is the home of the Galactic Federation. I know that we have people who time travel there all the time. I believe that during the 21 to 25 period that Donald Trump spent significant amounts of time off-world. I call it off-world. I know that Tartarian capital was actually on the moon. I know that we've got people operating well outside of our home on the earth. I understand that we sent 12 soldiers to another galaxy some 30 years ago. 8 of those soldiers returned home. 2 of those soldiers died, and 2 of the soldiers chose to stay where they had landed. It's very real. They're good people. They're also not so good people. We've got the reptilians and the grays who've been here for years. We had the giants for a while, and most are just like us. The problem we've had for years is they don't trust us because we have so many wars. And we're starting to get more trust because Donald Trump is taking care of the war issue to a large extent. I believe that they will be the greatest friends we've ever had, and that as we ascend, and I do believe we're going to all ascend, those who are willing to, that we will move into the fifth, sixth, seventh, well, let's see, how we're going to term this. My wife would call it, yeah, I don't want to go into terms. We'll move forward and ascend to the fifth, sixth, and seventh areas where we will be able to talk to each other without using our voices, because I believe that our alien friends do exactly that. And I think it's great that Donald Trump is releasing it. I also think it's going to be very difficult for people to understand, with all the lies they've been told about the earth is the only place that life can exist. And I believe that when our DNA gets expanded back to its 12 strands, and the pineal glands that have been frozen by fluoride are opened up, that we will develop the ability to speak to others without a voice. And I love it, that what's going on.
Thank you, sir. Quick comment. Our good friend, retired Colonel Chuck Sellers, Delta Forces, Special Ops, etc., who frequents this panel. I encourage all of our viewers to watch that premiere episode with Alex Collier and Chuck Sellers. And I raise this point right now based on what Tom Lennox just shared with us, communicating telepathically. Chuck Sellers walked us through his incredible, not once, but twice visitation by off-world entities, morphing, if you will, through his home and speaking to him for quite some time telepathically. And he broke this down in great detail. You'll want to watch that episode, which supports the notion of what Colonel Lennox is discussing here. Captain Rob, do you care to take this subject on, off-world activity?
Well, the thing that grabs me with this topic is you mentioned that off-world entities or off-world beings find there to be too much war and too much negativity and too much interference to have any kind of presence here. And call it principalities of darkness, call it ignorance, call it religion screwing us up, where we don't really understand the true infinite one-on-one relationship with the Creator, that we're made in the image and likeness and essence of God. So why are we begging all the time? Why are we begging for a bigger house or bigger car? Or Jesus, take the wheel. He gave us sovereignty. We have to act on our own accord through the powers and graces and energy and abilities that we have to take action and not live in fear. We're not broken, we're not separate, and we're not lacking in scarcity. We are full, we are perfectly made, we have infinite access. Jesus said, don't call me great, don't worship me, follow my principles. These things I've done, you can do, and even greater things, because we have the same Father. We have the same Creator. So we have to get the junk out of our heads to align with that quantum physics creator of the universe. And one of the things I love about quantum math, quantum physics, quantum deterministic physics, the quantum 3 to 5 second settlement of this internet of value is it's math based. And math is a science, it's a law given to this world by the lawgiver. The creator created laws and principles. Omniscience, if you break that word up, is omni science. Math is one of those science. And, mathematical order is where science and philosophy intersect most frequently. You can find a mathematical precise pattern in a snowflake, in a piece of hair, on a fingerprint, on a blood drop, on a voice print. There is evidence of a divine creator in mathematical patterns that are discernible everywhere. So to take this one step further, if we wanted to introduce an internet of value based on trustlessness, where we no longer have to trust the narrative or the institution telling us a story, but we get to verify the perfect science. I either did or did not at this very second transfer $50 to Derek's wallet. It complied, it checked his identity, it checked my identity, it checked my wallet, his wallet. I had the assets. I transferred them. They landed, they were ledgered, it's settled, it's done in 3 to 5 seconds. All the compliance, all the identity, all the capital, all the ledgering, all the legal transfer of title, everything happens in this system in 3 to 5 seconds. And we don't have to trust a Rothschild, a JP Morgan banker, a regulator in Washington, D.C., because this math that runs on mathematical precision can extract human emotions, greed, blackmail, stupidity, ignorance, capture whatever, and we can get into a state of trustlessness that's verifiable. That, to me, that's just a tiny drop of how we can make a transition as a civilization from having to trust a bunch of people. The power of life and death comes from the tongue. A lot of people are stupid. A lot of people are caught in bad systems. A lot of people are ignorant, atheist, dark. They don't give a damn about anything but themselves. And yet we live in this world where we have to take everybody's word for something. There's always an authority, a figure, a badge, a title, an office, a power. Everything gets distributed and everybody has their own agenda. And we live in a world of narratives. How about if we transition out of that world into a world of verifiable evidence where we don't have to take anybody's word for it? That changes civilizational architecture just through mathematics alone. So this topic fascinates me.
And your talking points fascinate me. Great information, great insights. Thank you, sir. And I love that word, trustlessness. That is so powerful. And you really brought home your message concerning this. Thank you very much. Michael Jaco, take it on, my friend.
Yeah, Ricardo alluded to Star Trek as being a historical narrative, and I think that's what we're going to find out eventually. If you look at Star Trek, came out in 1966, 30 years. You might remember Captain Kirk. He would have this flip phone that he would flip up, and Scotty, beam me up.
Yes.
So when did that flip phone come out? Came out 30 years, almost to the date later, and it was called Star Tac. And so we have a lot of this before. Now, I was involved in GPS when the first satellites went up in the military. We were, designing it and, running our vehicles with GPS. Man, what an incredible leap forward. And almost 20 years later, 18, President Clinton said, all right, we're going to release this to the public. So the public started getting GPS. So we have a lot of this technology that's waiting for us. I had a friend that worked for RCA, and he said 20 years before the plasma TV came out, they were seeing it, and they said that the reason why they weren't going to release it now is because they had it all. They had all these different, TV stacked up, and they were going to make, money from them and so forth, and eventually, release that. So I remember when the internet came out, my parents, they weren't going to have anything to do with it. They were going to have no computers, and of course, eventually they did. Now, these technologies are waiting for us. We are the factor that's keeping them from coming forward, and some other factors. Majestic 12, which is basically a group of individuals all the way back to President Kennedy's time frame, which wanted him assassinated because he was going to release stuff on extraterrestrials, as well as other things. But these are the things that have been blocking us. This group that's basically aligned with corporations that wanted the control of these technologies, and they would release them when and if they desired, where it would be more beneficial for them, not us. So we're moving into the realm where we, the people, will start to benefit, not these corporate entities that are very, very violent. And, yes, they will kill us, in mass with these bioweapons just to get control of us. And I think that control is being slipped away from them. There's no way they're going to have control over us going forward. And because of these types of disclosures, and I'm so glad that, we're doing these now, John, because, we evolved too, as a military group. Event in the first shows that we didn't want to reveal any of this type of information because it was kind of like a little bit too much for their audience. And now we are. So it is definitely a movement in the right direction to reveal this information. And, salute to you, John, for doing this, and salute to all of us that are, revealing. So thank you, and we look forward to more of this.
Thank you, Michael. Perspective, to our viewers, look at the various different aspects and perspectives that we're getting from each of our esteemed panel members here on this topic of off-world activity. And we're just scraping the surface rather. And you're right, Mike. It's about timing. As you were alluding to many months ago, Brad Wozniak was one of our guests here, and will be, of course, a returning guest. Sort of opened it up. And we covered it, and I backed off and didn't want to go there just yet as a matter of timing. But the president opened the doors for us all, and we thank our commander-in-chief and President Donald Trump for that. And now, great minds like yours, we can start taking it on, and all of us go through this journey together, helping one another make sense of this and welcome it. And to Tom Lennox's point, there are probably some bad entities out there, like there certainly are here at home. But by and large, we're getting help. We have been being helped. We're going to continue to get help, and we're going to learn a lot. We're going to be challenged, and it'll be our mission when we visit this subject on this panel to make that transition easier for all of us. So thank you all very much. Derek Johnson, your comments on off-world activities.
Well, I always have to break the ice with a few jokes. I mean, anybody's ever looked at Whoopi Goldberg ought to know there are extraterrestrials, right? But, it is. It's so true. We did have to pull the reins back a little bit, where we had to rein it in and go, because some of the target audience, as we talked about, they will absolutely, just because you talk about something they completely disagree with, they'll forget about the other 98% that they agree with and just discard you, right? And so you do have to be careful. But it's also true, if everybody listening will look back, like Jaco was just talking about, at every facet of life, somewhere, somehow, some way, there was something that someone either already knew about, their family member was telling you about it, that you didn't know about, the mainstream didn't know it. And then there was also the revelation of it, and people were either hesitant, didn't want to jump on board, they were either laggards, or they were straight out the gate all about it. So it goes back to, like Lieutenant Colonel was talking about, Bosi, about the religion, right? It depends on who you are. But I like to be the kind of like my grandpa was. My grandpa, he had the Native American mindset where he was open to all things. But he was grounded in his faith so much, like Rob was talking about. When you're grounded so much in your faith, and your spirituality. You already have every bit of what God has bestowed you in the holy word of God. He tells you all the time, like, there's nothing to fear because I already have everything around you. You've got angels around you, everything's commanded to you. All you have to do is put the faith in God when you're facing any battle, whether it's an actual spiritual battle, emotional battle, physical battle. If you'll put the faith in God, He's going to be there for you no matter what it is. We don't have to sit and wane and worry and fret and all these other things. It's already there. We have that built in us. And so that's part of, sometimes people do have to motivate others. But when it comes to things like this, my grandpa was always cool. He was like, look, I don't know. We'd go out at night, we'd look at the stars and the moon and everything. And he'd say, I know one thing, my eyes see that. It doesn't have to know exactly all the answers, but my eyes can see the stars, my eyes can see the moon. But it's kind of like the moon landing, right? The moon landing. Well, all you got to do is go real common sense and probably get a guy like me who has a southern accent, put a little narrative spin to it. It's like, hey, you know, you go from popsicle sticks, right? Everybody's had a popsicle in their life where you get these little sticks. That's what the Wright brothers built their aircraft with, was popsicle sticks, right? 1903, right? And they supposedly flew 12 feet or 20 feet, 12 feet high, something like that. Wasn't very far. So we go from that 1903 to 1969, 66 years later, and we got these little cowboys. They strap up and they get in this thing that's got like a Chevy big block or something like that, and they shoot out there. How did they know they were going to get through this ozone that they tell us about, right? The firmament. Oh, well, we know there's a fiery furnace. Well, how did they know they were going to get through it? How did they know they could get back through it? Right. So there's all these things out there that just don't add up, don't make sense. And that's just a common sense thing, but it's also distraction, theater, capture, control, and all these other things they've done. But then there's reality. There are technologies. We've always had drones. People just didn't know about it. We've always had technology. People just didn't know about it. So it's also President Trump just going through and just absolutely annihilating this whole narrative by every facet of what they've captured and controlled. They, the deep state, the Khazarians, everybody through the past, we could say 150 years just for target audience sake, because it's so hard for people to go back thousands of years and whatnot. But when you look at that, I've been reading a book, and I'm probably giving it, which is okay, I think, to give it some credit here. But I actually know the author, Johnny Enlow. I've been reading the Book of Enoch, and he proves it on page 21 and 22 right out the gate. There's a particular verse in our Bible, the 66 books that we have, the target audience has, right? That it's not accounted for in the Bible, but it says this verse, and so I'd have to explain it all in great detail. Don't have time for that, but there's a missing verse, and it's like, well, Enoch is in the Bible. Why isn't he talked about? Where's this person? Who is this person? Whatnot? But there's this book of Enoch that the Ethiopians have had, and all these other things. Well, it's like, so I tell people all the time, people like Lieutenant Colonel was talking about are so strict in their religion that they can't even see or even want to know that there may be more books to the Bible. There may be more prophets out there. There may be more people out there that connect. And it wouldn't be a bad thing. As long as their spirit aligns with the good things of God, it shouldn't be a bad thing. So my grandfather was one of those that always instilled in me that there's no way we can know everything, but everyone on earth can know a little bit of something. And so when we come together with the greater good of what we're all here to do, everybody has different experiences. Colonel Sellers, you were mentioning, he's been to Area 51, but just as we know, Area 51 is just one location. They have multiple areas around it that all have different clearance levels of military clearance. That it's kind of like a Coca-Cola formula. That there's been rumors for years that not all the chefs know the exact formula. Because if they did, guess what they would do? They would go out and try to mimic it somehow, some way, some form, and then they wouldn't need a job at Coca-Cola because they'd have their own taste and their own formula that would be similar to it. Then there'd be lawsuits. Then we get into the man-made stuff that Rob and I talk about. Then you then you get into the lawsuits, right? What's this law and what's this law and all that. So I always like to home it in a little bit for people to go, what if there's something about God that you don't know about? And a preacher friend of mine says that all the time to atheists. He said, well, what if there's something about God you just don't know about? And why are you so mad to know that maybe there's something out there a little bit bigger and greater than you. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Lennox and I, we were down at Trump Doral last year. We were sitting by around the pool, and everyone who's been to Trump Doral knows there's an airport nearby, so aircraft are coming over constantly. All right, and then also because it's so close proximity to an airport, they're real low to the ground, not a typical 50, 80, 100 miles out where aircraft could still be at a pretty high elevation and altitude. But he and I were sitting there, look up. We had all kinds of people by the pool out there. We're sitting by the pool. And there were probably 30 people in our group alone sitting there, and everybody got to witness this. And I said, look up. I have it on this phone. And matter of fact, John, you and I were talking about it, and you had asked me did I have that clip. And I'm gonna tell you what. Again, I know my phone. I'm pretty good with technology, but it went missing on my phone for a while. A video that I've had went missing, and all of a sudden it pops back up on my phone. All right, at a different timestamp. All right, so that's God, and also some other stuff, the timing as we talk about, because I know technology. I know what I have on my phone. I have two phones, and then one phone has 34,000 photos on it, and I didn't film it on that phone because of the storage space. So that tells you right there the timing of everything and how God works with timing. But Lieutenant Colonel, we sat there and we watched a ship, and you can see it on my phone. I also have multiple other ones at night in an Alabama location, and I took some friends out there, and so happened everybody got to witness it. And then when you film them, you can zoom in on a good iPhone, especially like the 17 Pro, like I have, and you can pull in and you can get real close to seeing all these different colorations. And it's things that have been described in the Bible. It's things that have been described with fallen angels and different things and different, like different structures, but how they've been drawn. I tell people all the time, the Bible says it. The Bible talks about fallen angels. The Bible talks about demons, demonic spirits. Not that we want that, but we have to address that where we know our enemy, as Rob was talking about. We always have to know who our enemy is. We have to know this. And the same thing that JFK. So all this all ties in. JFK talking about special operations always in every force. So there's your physical on earth, but then you have your God and your spiritual, and the Bible tells you these things. So, if we're trusting God or Yeshua or the Great Spirit, if you're Native American, if you're trusting that spirit though, and you're in that spirit always, as we are the temple of Christ, then we're going to be able to identify those things. But you shouldn't be afraid of those either. And you shouldn't be afraid to identify those either. And so what President Trump's doing is opening that massive can. And, it's coming whether you like it or not. So it's one of those things, again, it may be a subject you don't have to completely look at and you can put aside. But because it's spiritual related and God related, I think you should go ahead and tackle that and be open to what you hear and then what God reveals to you also in your own spirit. Because at the same time, God does give us dreams. He gives us visions. The Bible also talks about that. So when Jaco talks about certain things about the past or either things that he's thought of or the future or whatever it is, God reveals that to us. And that's how we have visions. That's how we have plans and strategies. That's how we're able to write books the way that we've written. And people always wonder, how do you write such a complex thought process? And I'm like, well, that's God. It's not us alone. It is truly a spiritual form.
Thank you, Derek. And this has been an intriguing discussion, and everyone brought so many different aspects, as I said before, and perspectives to the table on this. I want to close out with a couple of follow-ups to air out there for this panel to hear and our viewers. I looked at the reviews of the launch of Off-World Show with Alex Collier and Chuck Sellers, and it was a risk I took. But again, to Michael Jaco's and I discussion, timing is everything, and the timing was right. So I took the chance. We did the show, and I was eager to see what the response from the public would be. And much to my satisfaction, by my own estimates, I would say probably 95% of the public responses were extremely favorable. And I was very happy, that fuels me even further now. However, that 5%, there was a gentleman, I don't know his name, and who knows, who cares, but it fits into the dialogue that each of you have touched on. This gentleman, one of the 5% that didn't necessarily care for the broadcast, actually went as far as to say, "Hey, Chambers, I've been following you for a long time, and I'm disconnecting and unfollowing everything. I thought you were a man of God, and by bringing on these two godless men, I'm done with you." Wow. I mean, but that's out there. Calling Chuck Sellers and Alex Collier and me godless men. Whew, talk about a misunderstanding. But, that's why I'm bringing on Bishop Jim O'Connor. Thank you for that introduction, Derek. And we should probably have him back on this panel at one point. He's going to join us next month. And I'm going to take some of the excerpts from you gentlemen and run them on that show as well, because I'm trying to help the people bridge that gap. So this has been very valuable in that regard. So Dr. Sala will join me and Alex Collier and Bishop O'Connor next month. And I'd like to my producer, extend an invitation to the members on this panel for those that may have an interest in joining the monthly show for a cameo at some point, because I can see that everyone on this panel has great perspectives and some firsthand experience. Mike Jaco, for certain, I'd love for you to join us at some point, and Colonel Sellers. But the invitation will go out to everyone. And if you're interested, we'd love to have you join us in a future episode there. I've got to wrap this broadcast up, but it's been an incredible Global Defense War panel. I thank you all very much. But before we go, let's put up an image. And I'd like each panel member for 60 seconds or less to comment on it. Put up the image of Big Mike. There's Big Mike. Okay, why am I doing this? Well, we're having a little fun on this broadcast, but also this was significant. This fighter, UFC Freedom 250, surprises everyone with off the cuff, seemingly, statement, paraphrasing, "Michelle Obama is a man. Am I right, America?" Okay, so I'd like the panel to weigh in 60 seconds or less. Top of the panel, let's go full screen, go panel screen with Ricardo Bosi, and then we'll go through the panel in 60 seconds or less. What do you make of that? My only comment, and I'll put it out here now, we'll go through the panel and we'll wrap the show up, is if you had another first lady, Jackie O, Melania Trump, pick a first lady, who it's obviously an important, prestigious position, the First Lady of the United States. I would go out on a limb and say that if that happened to another First Lady, they would probably file a defamation of character lawsuit. How dare you do that to such a large audience on an event on the White House lawn being hosted by the President of the United States, and dare call a First Lady a man? They would probably sue. Last time I checked, there's no lawsuit filed, because in lawsuits, there's something little detail called discovery. And I think that discovery would discover the narrative of the fighter may be accurate. Having said that, top of the panel, Ricardo Bosi, weigh in if you will, go any way you like, take it away. Big Mike, UFC, by chance, part of the plan, whatever you want to go.
Okay, I'll start off with this. There's a meme. You see a gentleman sitting on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands and a beautiful wife in the bed. And she says, "Darling, having a small penis isn't a problem." And he said, "Yes, I know, but I wish you didn't have one at all."
Minor details.
That was a snipe. Right. And so what the UFC fighter did, that was a sniper shot. Beautifully, it was the right weapon, the right caliber, the right range, the right target, delivered with exquisite precision. Send it. And the timing of it and the delivery was exactly right. Because that's the opening salvo, believe it or not. That's the opening shot to people discovering that just about every Hollywood star that wears a skirt's a bloke, and everyone that wears pants is actually a girl. And that's going to break a lot of hearts. But that's what that was. This is the opening sniper shot to a bigger reveal, and they had to pick the right target the right way and deliver it to an audience with a very robust view of life. UFC audiences, they're robust. They're the ones that would take that message and then just promulgate it on. So that's what I see that as. Just perfect timing, perfect shot. Send it.
Thank you. Sniper shot. Got it. Thanks a lot. Colonel Tom Lennox, your view on Big Mike and UFC fighter.
The UFC fighter was right on target. Big Mike's mother left or Michelle's mother left everything to Michael Robinson, her only child. So
Understood.
for years, I've known that Big Mike was, and they say some people caught him, he and Barack doing their thing in the White House. Anyhow.
I'm sure. Yes. Well, there you have it. Another on-target sniper move. Certainly wasn't off the cuff, is what I'm gathering. Captain Rob, your views on Michael Yvonne Robinson.
We talk about 150 to 300 million people the world over are going to see some kind of direct or indirect. The biggest ever broadcast on, was it Paramount Plus ever? Joe Rogan. They're gonna immortalize this forever. This is a great awakening. So how many people in how many countries heard one of the most hypocritical, nastiest, most negative beings that, remember when she mouthed at the 9/11 memorial, all this for a flag, how she's hated America. They run a campaign of hope, and joy, or whatever his damn first campaign was all about. It's a great awakening. It's a shot across the bow. The next day, for 24, 36 hours, Michelle Obama trended on X, the biggest social media platform on the world. So the fact that, it's obvious to anybody with two brain cells, it's a man. But more importantly, it was a perfectly timed strategic nuclear bomb to awake people up across the planet.
Yes, common theme. Thank you, sir. And folks, Barry and Mike, justice is coming if it already hasn't happened. Michael Jaco, sir, your view on the Big Mike UFC.
Yeah, so a lot of us have known this for a very long time. Now, a lot of people didn't want to believe it, didn't understand how it could happen. Well, what about the children? And there's lots of, if you watch Michael, that was amazing because it was flapping around in there. So now, Joan, talk about timing. Joan Rivers revealed that Michelle Obama was a trainee, and she died shortly after that in a very suspicious operation. Yes. So, and that was all the way back in 2014. So we've seen this being revealed for a long time. How many people understand it? How many people believe it? I don't know. Are we at that 70-30, 80-20? I don't think we're close. So we still have a lot to reveal, and it's going to be exciting going forward to watch people wake up.
You bet. Thank you, Michael. Derek Johnson, close us out. Big Mike, what say you?
I don't want to be the physician in the discovery round. I know that. So, yeah. So thank you, doctors, for what you do. I don't want to be that one. But yeah, this goes back to, like Jaco just said, Joan Rivers, Clint Eastwood. Everybody remember Clint Eastwood when he said that Obama was the greatest fraud ever perpetrated on the American people, right? And it goes back to, all right, let's bring out the birth records. Let's bring them out. Did you notice on the Obama Library, right? The actual structure is made from architects from Ethiopia. Where's Ethiopia? It's right next to what? Kenya, right? And those places years ago were the same place. Where is Obama old Barry from? Would be what? Kenya, right? So when you tie all that together, and then you look at the dress that Big Mike was wearing, it was her mother. It's all about Big Mike. It's all about her mother. It's nothing to do with Barry and Barry's mom and dad, right? So there's a lot of tie-ins and connections there that they showed. So I think it's perfect, the timing that we talk about. Also, what just happened with the no transgenders and no men and women's sports. I mean, all this is all tying in together. And what a letdown that will be for however many millions but billions around the planet when they find out all of this. So it's a perfect setup because they're bringing Obama and everything back in the picture. He's posting a lot on social media, quote unquote. And one last thing, it goes back to what Lieutenant Colonel talks about with the men, right, grabbing their jock straps out of the women's purses, right? If think about this, for the real women out there, if you just got just hosed and exposed all over world TV like this, shouldn't your man be coming out to defend you really quick? Wouldn't Barry or Barack Hussein, whatever people want to believe he is, shouldn't he be saying, that's my wife you're talking about? I have the balls, she doesn't. Shouldn't he be defending her honor? What do you hear? Nothing. Crickets.
Great stuff. And folks, you might say, why would we take our time with such a panel and have this discussion? Because of the great deceit at the highest level positions in the world. That's the reason why. And thank goodness that was deployed, as our panel said, sniper precision, perfect timing. And we'll end the show there. This has been a great panel. I can't thank you, gentlemen, enough. Please, to our audience, visit jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on contributors on the upper left-hand portion of the navigation bar, and you'll see these gentlemen and others, the contributors to our network, their bios and links to follow them beyond this very broadcast. I want to salute you, gentlemen, for your continued service on behalf of my fellow Americans and people all throughout this world. Thank you all very much. Stay safe, and don't forget to get a bigger bucket for your popcorn. Thank you all very much. I'll be right back with an important announcement about Bosi briefs. I'll be right back. Thank you, Darryl.
His commentary and analysis is among the best, bar none. His words serve as a masterclass. He deconstructs the deceptions of the PSYOP war. He is the author of The Greatness Awaits You, the national leader of Australia One Party Incorporated, a monthly panel participant in JMC's Global Defense War, in a league of his own, an international treasure, a follower of Jesus Christ. He is Ricardo Bosi. Ricardo Bosi is a published author and speaker, international business consultant, former Australian Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel, having served 24 years in the Australian Army, including postings to the Special Air Service Regiment, the 1st Commando Regiment, Headquarters Special Operations, and the U.S. Combined Joint Task Force Headquarters in Kuwait. Don't miss JMC Broadcasting's Bosi Briefs, where John sits down with Ricardo, helping to connect the dots, making sense of the madness, keeping us all grounded and united as the battle between good and evil play out before our very eyes. Join John and Ricardo every other Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here at jmcbroadcasting.com.
All right, quick announcements. We're out of here in less than 60 seconds. Off planet, or actually off world, it's called, with JMC. Be sure to join us on the second episode, and to warm you up, go check out the premiere episode that we did. It's 12 days published now on our Rumble channel and still on the homepage of jmcbroadcasting.com. So come join us next month on Off-World with JMC. Also, we're taking on healthcare at JMC Broadcasting, very popular right out of the gate, as I knew it would be. is Christy Lee, your show host. Truth About Healthcare, weekly broadcast, incredible doctors. She just had Brian Artis on. You'll want to check out those episodes. And I want to thank, again, our esteemed guests, our military panel guests, for their time and expertise in today's panel, addressing issues that concern you and I, each and every one of us, not only here in America, but all across this world. Don't forget to join Sheila Holm and I on, I think it's July 30th. There we go. Thank you. Thursday, July 30th, 8 p.m. Eastern. Visit jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on Premium Portal. See if this is an option for you. If it is, we look forward to seeing you there. Sheila Holm, 1 solid hour live on screen. I'll be your host to answer your questions. All right, subscribe for free at jmcbroadcasting.com or consider our Premium Portal. Be safe, stay alert, and we'll see you next month here at the Global Defense War panel. May God be with you.